favor?
Aye. Turn your mics on.
I just so everybody knows, tonight we are on Smack tonight, and we will be videotaped and broadcast, so please act accordingly. Item number 2, site plan modification for 1634 Turnpike Street, map 95, lot 20. The applicant, Cumberland Farms, requests to discuss site plan modifications they made in discussion on landscaping. So can that person be in front of us and let's talk? I got to turn my mic on.
Good evening. My name is Delina Borshevsky, Cumberland Farms.
Just bring the mic closer to you. I'm sorry. You gotta,
Can you hear me now?
there you go.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Where's the...
So, Mr. Chairman, this was brought up that they submitted their as-built plan for final sign-off, and they wanted to get their landscape bond back. We did an inspection, and I would say a significant portion of the landscaping had not been maintained. It was overgrown, a lot of weeds, a lot of dead plants. They had a landscaper come in, remove all the dead material. I'd say there's probably about 30 plus, maybe 40%, at least 30% had to be removed. While we were out there and when we were looking at the as-built, and it's right in here. If I can, let me try to figure out how to zoom in. Let's. I don't know. In front of, you have the Cumberland Farms, you have the dumpster and a sidewalk area, and there's a, right here, right here are two, it's kind of, the new Cumberland Farms has the little picnic area. They had removed that and turned it into parking, and that's right in the code, alteration of parking and what triggers, at least at minimum, a minor if modification. So, so I've asked we reached out to Cumberland Farms and we're like, there were a whole host of other things. There were 3 dead trees that we recommended, that actually were recommended in the site plan. They finally did remove those. So I reached out to them and they reached out to me and I said, you need to come in front of the board and discuss what the board wants to look at doing. 2 things. One is, do you want the replanting? Would you want them to look at proposing something slightly different? I will let you know if you go out there, the way it was designed with the things, they either need to raise the welcome to Stoughton sign, or because they put landscaping that covers part of that sign, or do we can look at those in the future. And in addition and how do you want to deal with the site plan modification? Do you have issues with them getting rid of the picnic area? So that's why they're here today.
Is there reasons why this was done or how this was done?
So I work for the planning department. Facilities did it because of the parking shortage. There wasn't enough parking and the sitting area wasn't being used as much. And they did it without applying for a permit. As far as the landscaping, we took care of the dead trees on July 3rd, and the landscaping was done on August 4th, so it's all being taken care of. Right now, the only issue is the parking. It wasn't sufficient enough, so they
just
turned
to
into...
step back on the landscaping, so you've installed the landscaping per the plans that we had that was originally done?
So the dead landscaping, the trees and Everything else was redone on August 4th,
Right, but was it redone per the approved plans?
per the approved plans, the same type of shrub.
You haven't inspected that yet?
No, I did not know that they had done that, so we'll have to look at inspecting it. If it has been done, if it has been done per the plan, then I would recommend that, at a minimum, the board continue to hold the landscape bond for 1 year, because 30 to 40% of the landscaping had to be replaced. Irrigation, actually, in addition, irrigation had been pulled up, wasn't working.
That was going to be my next, two next questions. One was going to be, is there irrigation, and is it being maintained?
Yeah, irrigation was restored, was redone on August 4th as well.
So there's irrigation to the whole site.
Yes.
So right now, there's two issues in my mind. One is the parking issue. I agree there's not enough parking there, and that area doesn't get used. But part of the original decision for that, when we did that whole plan, was that seating area was going to be somewhat used to try to make that as a more of an eating, because you had food in the place, and a place for people to congregate. And I know just from history, it hasn't been that way and hasn't been done.
It
Probably
has.
because the area hasn't been maintained or cleaned or whatever by the people, the applicant that's there. From my point of view, I don't have a major issue that you should have come before us, and we should have went with a full modification
Right.
to the drawing. I mean, that's part of what the requirements are. And the other item, I guess the secondary item, which has obviously come up now, is however you set that sign, if it can't be seen, then we need to talk about a way to get that sign raised.
Looking at the pictures that I have, I don't have a direct picture of the sign itself. I'm not sure if it's covering it.
I drove by, actually this afternoon, I actually was coming back from a meeting, and I drove right by, and I looked, and I was like, oh, because I know that we had a discussion about another Welcome to Stoughton sign last meeting, and I'm like, oh, can we see this one? And some of the landscaping, it covers just some of the bottom of it. I think we should consider looking at raising it. I'd have to go out and fully look at it again.
So it shouldn't be, there's no electricity to that sign, so it shouldn't be a major issue.
Nope, shouldn't be. It's
It's fairly
Okay.
simple to raise up. I don't know, anybody other members of the board have any questions or comments?
No, I definitely think there's not enough parking there. That is one busy place.
okay. So, okay, go ahead.
What I noticed was the seating area, a couple of years ago, when they first went in, for a while there, it was locked, so people couldn't get access to it. And what I see is people sitting in their car eating, maybe had it been opened, they would have been more inclined to use it instead of sitting in their car. And the other comment, getting back to the sign, again, if you can't see the sign, it doesn't serve a purpose that we wanted it to. So,
I'm not sure why it was locked. I'm not sure on that. Maybe because kids are using it after hours and we're not unlocking it. I don't know. But
I used to get my coffee every morning there, so I was aware of it, so. Not that I was sitting, I had to go to work, but.
So, Bill, I think my recommendation, unless else the board has anything, is that we would hold the landscaping bond for another year at this point in time, because they held it off. And then, I'm not sure, do we take a separate vote on adding these 2 parking spaces or deleting them, or?
I think what you can do if you wanted to, because, we've still got the landscape bond open on it, and we're bringing it in front, and it is a minor thing. If you wanted to, for the record vote that you approve the minor modification to remove the seating area and have it be parking, I can write a memo to the file and include it, and then it has to be included in the as-built, final as-built. You could also motion that they need to work with myself to look at the landscaping and to raise the Welcome to Stoughton sign so it's not covered, and then the landscape bond being held for another 24 months.
12 months. 12 months.
Oh, I'm sorry, 12 months, sorry.
Can I have somebody make some recommendations, please?
Well, one question. Is there any proposal to at least keep some seating area and increase the parking?
The sitting area is no longer there. I do have the as-built if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no room to do it. One of the interesting things, Paul, about this site, if you go to some of the other newer Cumberland farms, and I had a discussion with Chairman Kelly about it, the seating is adjacent right to it, and then the parking is right against it. It's usually right part of the sidewalk, so you can walk out that side door in their new configuration. This thing, you have to walk in front of, well, in the dumpster area where actually patrons park in front of the dumpster. So you have to walk in front of the dumpster behind the cars and then to get to this seating area. And there's no place to add it. So, and they've actually, the reason they're here is because they took it out and it's 2 parking spaces.
Yep, okay.
Well, I think there's at least 3 recommendations. If we can get some motions on those recommendations, then we can kind of go forward.
Yeah, well, I'd make a motion on all 3, on the raising of the sign, minor modification to the, eliminating the eating area for parking, and
keeping the landscape bond for another 12 months.
keeping the landscape on for 12.
And I'll go out and with engineering and do an inspection now that I know that it was installed on the beginning of August.
Can I have a second on that motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
You're very welcome. Next item on the agenda, continued public hearing to be held to petition of applicant Lewis Assisted Living LLC and owner Yolande Lewis, 36 Luna Street, Waltham, Mass., represented by Terrence P. Morris, Esquire, 57 Elm Road, Newton, Mass., for a site plan approval under Section 10.6, site plan approval of the Town of Stoughton bylaws for the proposed building renovation to create a 13-bed assisted living facility and the construction of 16 parking spaces to be located at 239 Pleasant Street, Assessors Map 67, Lot 301, in an RU residential zoning district. And the applicant and/or representatives, please come up.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Morris is online with us. I see him online. We, at the last meeting that we discussed this, you asked that we go in front of the ZBA. If you see, I have a memo that says that we did go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals on July 20th, 2023, and it was to get their opinion regarding their condition of the sidewalk, and the ZBA reviewed that, and they voted that the proposal met the intent of the condition. So therefore, I've prepared, because that was the last issue that the board had with this project was, did their design meet the condition? So therefore it does. I'm recommending approval. There's a subject to the findings and the conditions that are within the attached findings and conditions. And just please be aware that 4 members, Mr. Murphy cannot vote because this was prior to him being on the board.
Okay,
Can I ask a question, though?
You can ask questions.
go ahead.
A question I have is that later on in Article, I believe, Article 8, I believe that gets down to that same area, the property next door.
Correct. There is a small sliver of triangular piece, and we'll show that, that is zoned GB. And they have a special permit for this from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the use of this as a assisted living, or what they call under the code nursing home.
Okay.
So taking that small sliver out doesn't affect this decision at all.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically what we're going to do tonight is we're going to vote on the prepared special permit, site plan special permit approval. There were 4 waivers that were requested within this, and the waiver So we have a project review fee waiver, which the staff feels that we should not be waiving that fee. So they've recommended a denial on it. Development impact report, the staff recommended that approval would be okay, that because of the existing building and the addition of the new landscape, and that we wouldn't be getting, the impact would not be that bad. Parking space standards provide for 9 by 18 spaces, and according to the engineering, that special permit request would be okay. So based upon those conditions, the plan that's been sent to us, I'd like to see if we get a motion or if there's any further discussion on this.
Do we need separate motions on these, or can we combine them?
I believe that you
Need separate
could
motions.
approve the site plan subject to the 3 waiver approvals.
Okay.
Yeah, we could, but those are special permit requests.
Oh, yes, then you
They
have to take
be
those
voted on-
separately.
Each one of them has to be voted on separately. Yes, sir. Could you come up, could you come up to?
Can I ask the board
excuse-
members to please use their speakers? Because I know I'm getting old, but apparently I'm getting deaf too.
Sir, I'm sorry. The speakers are on. If it's not getting picked up, I'm very sorry about that. I will make sure it's closer to me. Does anybody else have any comments on this? Okay. So could I get a motion that the review fee waiver request is denied?
So made.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion for the development impact report, that development impact report will be waived.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Parking space and standards per section 6.1.7.2, that we will waive those space sizes at this time. Can I get a motion on that?
So made.
Second? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion to approve the site plan as presented?
So made.
Second.
So I'm going to modify that, and that the site plan and special permit approval findings, recommendations, and requirements are approved with that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 4, continue public hearing will be held on the petition of applicant Best Price Signs and Printing Corp., 244 Liberty Street, Suite 8, Brockton, Mass., and owner Iglesia Dios Pentecostal, 710 Turnpike Street, Stoughton, Mass., for a special permit under Section 6.2.7, special permit for the Town of Stoughton zoning bylaws to install a sign in such a way that it will exceed the maximum allowable size of the property located at 710 Turnpike Street, further identified in Assessors Map Lot 91, Lot 2, located in residential suburban BRB zoning district.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has kind of gone back and forth. I did want to let you know that I've been working with the applicant. I knew that some of the issues that the board had were the overgrowth of the existing landscaping, and if anyone's gone by there, that was done probably 2 months ago. We looked at they got all of that cleaned up, and then we looked at, I worked with them on a landscape plan, which is on the back of the sheet for, and we went with their landscaper and discussed different things. So we've looked at, so they've presented a landscape plan, and they have cleaned up all of the other existing landscaping. So I did want to let you know what that has been transpired, has worked with the applicant. So, and I know that the minister is here and the sign person is here. So.
I respect that you did the landscaping plan. Normally, we would require colored plans with
Yeah.
the type of thing.
Yeah.
I understand this is a
It
fairly
was
small
just a
plan.
small-
Right, and it's not a full site plan, but I just want to make a mention that would be a normal procedure. My concern going forward with the site and the landscaping is the existing landscaping around. Who is going to maintain that? Is it going to continue to be maintained by you as we're going forward?
Oh, Gilmore, you need to,
Turn it on.
and bring it closer to you.
Okay, the church is gonna continue to do the maintenance. They have a member of the church, they own a landscape company. They're gonna do all the maintenance periodic.
Gilmore, closer to you so they can hear it.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
I say the church, they're gonna do the maintenance. They have a member of the church. They own a landscape company. They're gonna do all the maintenance and make sure everything done right.
Bill, we don't, because this is not a full site plan approval, it's just a sign, we don't have a landscape bond or anything else
No.
on them, right?
No.
The existing signs that are on the building, what's going to happen with those?
Every sign you have in the building, they're gonna remove. They only have a banner. They don't have any other permanent sign. You have only banner for.
Right, there's banners, so those are
Yeah.
going to be all removed?
Everything gonna remove. The day I install the sign, because I'm the owner of the sign company, I will make sure I will gonna remove everything.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
No, well, just that they've cleaned the place up pretty good, and with the new sign and that banner sign gone, that'll be another big improvement.
And I would hope that, the history of that maintenance over there has been very poor. I would hope that going forward that there's a real big effort to make that look much nicer.
Yeah, they have a new pastor, new administration. They have a new administration at the church. He's the new guy.
Right, because it's been quite an eyesore.
Yep.
I cannot vote on this because it was not at the beginning, but as a neighbor, I live right around the corner. And what I will say, yes, the landscaping has improved, and it's nice to see. I just hope that it's kept up. The other question I notice, or comment that I have is, in front of the position where you're going to put the sign,
They're gonna be,
no, I know where you're going to put it. I understand that. But I see cars parking in front of that. Is that actually a area that's considered parking?
no, the car have to park on the back of the building. I
So
think they park the car over there when they have to drop off and pick up some stuff. I will talk to him.
Nobody's parking around in the front of the church.
Yeah, he say he knows nobody can park over the front of the church. Everybody have to park on the back of the church.
But
Yeah,
that should be striped off with, stipulating no parking.
Yeah,
Because I've seen cars parked there.
okay, if you want, I can put some signs. When they put the sign, say no park over there, only 5-minute park, this I can put the sign, there's no problem.
Could-
Can put
could I
a couple
make-
signs.
Make
say-
a suggestion as opposed to putting more signs up, is just to stripe it off as no parking. You're referring to right in front of the sign,
In front of where the sign's going to,
where it abuts Turnpike
sign
Street.
to Turnpike Street, I see cars parking there from time to time.
This
So
area here.
between the sign and the road.
Yes.
Sign. So
Yeah.
what they're looking for is just to get this striped, this area striped.
Mr. Chairman, I have not prepared a set of conditions. If you wanted to
We can add that in.
look at adding that, and, you can close, if you're satisfied, you can close the public, once you finish your deliberation, I'd recommend you could close the public hearing and then direct me to write a set of findings and any special conditions that you wanted.
Okay.
Anybody else on the board? Anybody from the public want to be heard on this?
Good evening, members of the board. Bob Mullen, 19 Clover Lane. I live up the street from this in the Tanglewood area. I'm just curious, I don't have any diagrams or anything, but is this a lit sign? And how large is the sign? Anybody can answer that?
Be 7 feet,
Eight by-
7 feet to the top of the sign from the ground, and it's not illuminated.
8 by 4 total.
A sheet of plywood. basically, size.
Okay, thank you. Didn't know the specifics.
Very good.
Thanks.
Anybody else from the public want to be heard? Can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Second.
Okay, so Bill, we would recommend you put together an order of conditions, add in the striping on the front, and that you'll work with them on the landscaping plan, also that they need to commit to maintenance of the landscaping for the entire site, not just this small area, but for the entire site.
And removal of the banner
Yeah,
on...
all the signs that are on, the existing signs that are on the building.
So those are really 3 special conditions, okay.
Correct. All in favor of closing the meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So just to let you know, so they've closed the hearing. I will write up a set of conditions. I will contact you, Gilmore. I'll let you look at them, and I will be presenting those to the board at their meeting on the 28th. So that's in 2 weeks.
Okay, I have to be here in 2 weeks. We have to be here in 2 weeks?
No, they don't have to. You don't have to. I'll let you look. I'll call you and get you a draft condition so you can see what they're voting on.
Okay,
Okay?
perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Item number 5 on the agenda, continued public hearing will be held at the petition of applicant T.W. Conway LLC, care of Conway Development, 104 Page Street, Suite 2, Stoughton, Mass., represented by High Point Engineering, Dedham Executive Center, 980 Washington Street, Suite 216, Dedham, Mass., for special permit under Section 6.1.6 and 6.1.9, off-street parking and loading requirements for a reduction in parking requests, site plan review under Section 10.6.2 for the proposed development of 6,800 square feet of new building area consisting of 34 movable additional self-storage units. Waiver request Section 10.6.5 Development Impact Report. Project located at 104 Page Street, Assessors Map 104, Lot 04, in the Highway Business District zoning area. Good evening. Put your name in for the record, please.
Sure. Good evening. For the record, my name is Nicole Langley. I'm an associate with High Point Engineering. And with me tonight is Paul McGinnis representing Conroy Development. These have been all set to present the project. So as Mr. Kelly had read, we're here for the project known as Stoughton Self-Storage, which was here before this board in 2016 for the construction of the 3-story self-storage facility with office space on the first floor, excuse me. At that time, we had constructed zoning compliant parking, which, as you can see on the presentation, there's parking adjacent to the building, which consists of approximately 13 spaces with an additional 60-plus spaces across Reebok Drive. Since the opening of the self-storage facility in 2019, the parking area across Reebok Drive is very rarely, if ever, used for vehicles parking for the facility. So Conroy has looked at this and wanted to utilize their property and make the best use of it. So we're proposing to install 34 what's called mass movable self-storage units on top of the existing pavement in the parking lot across from Reebok Drive, from the main building. These units will be consistent with the colors of the existing facility, with gray, light gray trim and red doors to match the Cube Smart. There's no increase in impervious area. The units will be placed on top of existing asphalt and actually replace the asphalt with roof runoff, which is considered clean. There's no change to the drainage design because there's no crease in impervious area. The drainage patterns remain the same, so we'll be reusing the existing facilities. And we are proposing the addition of 4-foot-high black aluminum fence that will continue to enclose 3 sides of the storage units on the parking lot. There'll be vertical pivot gates at the entrance and the exit of this parking lot, which will be card readers to enter and a loop detector to exit. There'll be one way in, one way out flow circulation. We did meet with the Conservation Commission informally to discuss this project, and they agreed that no further action is required on their purview. So basically, that's just an overview. It's a, relatively small change to what's there today, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Yep. Where you going to put all the storage there? Now, I see the, adjacent to that, all the open spaces, those will not be used, or are those going to be used for parking, or?
They will be used for parking, and they're going to be considered in the overall parking count. They will be managed by the property owner.
Okay, in the riprap areas, is there any planting existing in the riprap?
I'll show you, turn this towards you. So if you can see here, hopefully I'm speaking loud enough, there's no planting in this area. It's too steep of a slope, but we have existing planting along these islands, along the front of
Nicole,
Reebok Drive.
sorry, could you hold the mic? We are being taped. I don't know if it's being picked up.
Oh,
Yeah, because we're being taped and we can't
okay.
pick it up.
My apologies. That's better.
That's better.
So, as I was saying, no planting in the riprap slope. It is too steep and won't hold plants. But the site itself is significantly planted. We have submitted a landscape as-built plan, I believe in 2019. Those have since been maintained and monitored by the Conservation Commission as well.
Okay. What's the slope on that riprap?
I believe it's 3 to 1.
Because I've seen some very interesting plantings of trees, et cetera, incorporated in riprap. Easton is there's a couple of spots that they do that. So my thing is that on these riprap areas, we should start, pocket planting, spruces or some types of trees. I know it's probably doable. I'm not sure because I am not familiar with the site exactly.
Sure. Looking at this plan I have here, this is the grading plan. This is an as-built of what's built out there today. We are 2 to 1 slope in this area, which is why we riprap the slope. So that's why it wasn't planted. We did have a landscape professional, both a landscape architect design it. He did do some terraced landscaping over here where we had steep slopes, but because of the proximity to the roadway and keeping the area clear, he didn't feel he had enough space for plantings.
The other thing, Paul, if you look at that riprap, it's a pretty heavy riprap. It's not a small riprap, and the stones are fairly large to plant.
Yes. But in context, I have seen in Easton over by Roach Brothers Way, there's quite a steep slope with very large riprap. And what they did do was they pulled out spots and they planted some substantial trees, evergreen trees in there. And it looks quite nice. I mean, I would encourage maybe that we as a board for landscaping should encourage that maybe some creative designs go again to encourage more planting of trees and stuff on these sites, you know. So
I
if
know
it's-
the area was looked at during design. I'm not sure where it stands today, but it was deemed that the space wasn't wide enough to do those types of planting
Okay.
like we did on this side.
All right.
Anybody else have any questions?
How many parking spaces?
Richard, your mic. Richard.
How many parking spaces are you eliminating?
40.
Okay, thank you.
And just speaking to that from when we sat on the board originally, when this site plan came before us, one of the concerns I had was that because it's a self-storage area, we're paving a huge amount of area that really was going to be totally underutilized, and since the years it was built, it has been shown to be underutilized. There was a lot of work to going in. They actually cut into some of the conservation area. There's a lot of drainage. There was a lot of stuff that went around to get this in, that at the time, without going through a bunch of zoning variances that they couldn't get granted, they ended up having to put this in. So I don't see there to be an issue with that. It's not like we're taking away something that has ever been used. There's gets a lot of unused asphalt right now, so it doesn't do much any good.
Yeah, today, as the facility stands, it offers 81 total parking spaces, so there'll still be 41 spaces available if this is approved.
Anything?
Yeah, okay. Not as a board member, but as a resident. A couple of questions I have is, for these units, is there any type of fire protection on these units?
No, they're classified as temporary structures because they're not kind of a
Okay.
foundation.
And what about something if one of the units was to have something, hazardous waste leaking out, there's no containment or anything like that?
That's a restriction. There'll be no vehicles, boats, or anything with hazardous material allowed to be stored in these units.
Okay. I noticed, driving by there, two things. One is, you don't allow any boats or cars to be stored there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Who owns the actual roadway right there that comes?
The roadway is actually an access easement, and it's owned by Conroy.
Okay, because what I've noticed is you have a pothole that almost took out my front tire. From a personal note, I would highly recommend you get that repaired.
Okay.
Other than that, I got nothing.
Thank you.
Nicole, he did raise a good question about the fire suppression system. I know it's classified as temporary structures, but this many classified together. Has anybody talked to the fire department and/or the building inspector about what may be required for this going forward?
My intent was to go to them after we went through this process. Have shop drawings and.
Normally, we would have the fire, I don't remember what the
Mr.
fire department
Chairman,
was.
everything was reviewed and routed to police, fire, building, engineering, conservation, so, and they.
There was no
Board of
comment
Health,
from the fire
And they
department?
did not comment.
There was no comment.
Okay. Is there any comments from the public? Anybody would like to speak on this? Mr. Zamanian?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members. Mark Zamanian, 5 Low Avenue. I also am the chair of the Redevelopment Authority, for the record. Just have a few quick questions. Technical would be, there's a proposal for a 4-foot fence at this property. Is that ample height to, I don't know if you want to conceal the area, but is that a height that the board is comfortable with? I know it's up on a hill a little bit, but just thought I'd bring
The
it.
fencing that they're proposing is not a concealment fencing, it's just a black picket fence.
No, it's an open fence,
Just an
correct?
open fence, it's not for concealment.
Is 4 feet ample for security purposes?
That would be
Through
up to
you.
That would be up to the owner.
Thank you. If I could respond to that, the fence that we're proposing is an extension of the fence that was approved under the 2016 application. So it's just enclosing the area. It's not for security matters. These units will be locked.
One other question, well, I have a couple, but these units are being, this is a proposal for mobile storage. Are these units proposed to be moved in and out of this area by clients on a regular basis? No? So these are permanent structures that will sit there and could not be moved, correct?
No, they can be moved, but that's not the business model. We own them and rent them.
Okay, I ask because I noticed on the plans that in one area, there's a 23-foot span between curbing and the front of the storage container. That's going to make it very difficult to get them in and out of there. There's 24 in other places, but I would have concerns that there's not ample room. Being somebody who understands how to pick something like this up, 28 to 35 feet is a good spread. But if you look at this corner, yes, yeah. I just have some concerns about that to the board. Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may, and this is another technical question, I noticed the silt sock design on these plans. Is that a temporary design for construction, which there really isn't any of, but are they going to stay there, or are they going to be pulled out once the operation is complete?
Thank you. So the erosion control plan that you see is for construction phase only, or what we're calling construction phase. It was put in to appease the Conservation Commission. I had discussions with James Conlon, and he asked that we install those just to add extra protection to the resource areas. Those will be removed at the end.
Thank you for that. I'll wrap it up quickly here, Mr. Chair. May I ask how many spaces are currently used for this property? I know there's multiple businesses in there, employees and/or clients.
So there's two businesses in there. The main business is the self-storage facility of Cube Smart. The other business is Conroy's office. There's not many of them, so there's about 3 at the most for Conroy employees. Over the years, this parking lot adjacent to the building is never full. And there's never been parking across the street that we've seen, so there seems to be ample parking adjacent to the building.
Thank you again for that answer. My last question or comment to the board, this roadway is in tough condition, the easement road. It has been brought to the attention of Conroy Development in the past through the town. I would just ask that you consider asking Conroy to take a real good look at that roadway, fill the major divots in that road that are impeding the use. I understand it's used by some heavy trucks. I get it wears out, but maintenance is required for this. And up to this point, we've really struggled to have a roadway that's functional. And that's used by a lot of residents coming in and out the back door to BJ's and such. So I thank you for your time. Thank you.
We brought this up earlier about the roadway and also about the crosswalk and how that was going to get handled, about the signage. What was the final determination we did there with that?
If you look on your plans, there are notes saying, so the portion of the easement that's within Conroy's property, just so you know, is at the property line here, the right-of-way with Page Street, and ends at the property line here with BJ's. So it's just this portion that you see. As we know, Amazon trucks use this area to access their facility. They have knocked out the flashing beacon for pedestrian crossing, as well as a sign. We are noting on the site plans that we will replace the flashing beacon and the signage back to its original approved condition.
Including all the pavement markings?
Yes, we did the pavement markings as well.
We do know that Amazon's coming before us for some additional work. I think that you and Amazon need to work together to get this road fixed. So I think in order for part of this project, the way this is going together, You got to work with them. When Amazon came before us in a pre-construction meeting, I was very adamant about them making sure they deal with that roadway coming in, and I'm going to put the same thing on you, that somehow you guys got to get together and figure this out, because it's the only way it's going to get done. The road probably needs to be rebuilt, not just patched and pothole filled. It probably needs to get rebuilt. The entranceway from Page Street into that road, that whole configuration is not great. It probably needs to be refigured, but the road definitely needs to get rebuilt, and I've already told Reebok. So that would be one of the things I'd be definitely looking at before I'd be ready to sign off on this project, and what the plan is to get that done.
Mr. Chairman, Amazon is a tenant, so that they will have to work with, obviously,
I understand. They have to
the
work
property
with,
owner and try to,
right.
Amazon.
And when I spoke to Amazon, that was one of the things I did say, is that we need to have them put that as part of their priority for the project that they have coming up. Mr. Conroy's in front of us now for a project that he wants, again, that's going to, if anything, it's going to add some traffic. It's not a major daily traffic in and out, but you're going to add clients, you're going to add people, there's going to be added traffic. Amazon is looking to add traffic. The road needs to get fixed. There's just too many people in town that use that road. It just needs to get fixed. So how that gets done, or what your contractual, legal ways of doing it, I can't get into it. I don't want to get into it. I want that responsibility to kind of turn over to where you are. Okay. Anything else?
My only concern with that, Mr. Chairman, is it's a long, probably legal process dealing with an entity like Amazon or their property owner. So what level are you looking for? An agreement? Are you looking for it to be designed? Are you, just...
I need an agreement between you and Amazon that says that road's going to be fixed with a timeline, and then that the road's either going to get rebuilt or brought back to the standards that Stoughton requires for subdivision roadways. And then, that's a redesign process. But we can do that with an agreement, and then that plan will have to be reviewed by us going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether that is you presenting it or Amazon presenting it, we just have to come up with some sort of an agreement, because we just can't keep on letting things go and then nothing happen, because everybody points fingers. When BJ's was in front of us, well, it's not our responsibility. Amazon, you're there. No, I'm kind of sick of listening to that. So we got to get it fixed. There's 2 years coming before us. 2 years, figure it out. If you got to bring BJ's into it, bring BJ's into it. I don't know what all the tenant and landlord requirements are and what the leases are, but that's for you guys to figure out.
And that'll be a same condition for Amazon.
When Amazon's coming before, it's going to be the same condition I'm going to be putting on them, because I've already brought it up to them. They didn't even know the road existed, the people that were presenting it to me. So I just said, you got to do something with it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything?
Okay?
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Paul.
Are these double-stacked units or single units?
Single.
Single.
The
And
same as just showing the drawings.
what's the, have you looked at the visual effect from Route 24, looking over there? Would these units be visible? Will it look like a steel wall from Route 24?
I'd say barely visible.
Yeah, there's a wooded riprap buffer between 24 and the parking lot. So maybe in winter condition, and the road, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, but have you looked at that? Can you assure us that it's not going to look like a steel wall looking across coming down Route 24?
I haven't done a rendering. We've showed pictures in the submission from perspectives.
Yeah.
But we
see on
haven't
the
done
front-
a rendering to show, an elevation of these units and how they're going to look from 24, but there is significant screening.
Yeah, I can see that from the picture right here. But, I would just like to be assured that we're not going to look at a steel wall driving down Route 24.
Have somebody take some pictures driving down 24 in the call and see what we can come up with.
Okay,
Just don't do it while you're driving.
I'll do it.
Can I have a motion to continue this hearing?
So made.
Second.
Can we, how much time do you think you're going to need for us to come up with what we're looking for?
have to be careful what I say, but it's very hard to reach the other party. But we'll try 30 days and see, we'll do
Okay.
the best we can.
So can we get it for the second hearing in September, first hearing in October, I guess?
That would be October 12th.
Okay, so motion to continue to October 12th.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can see that on this.
Item number 6, continued public hearing will be held to petition of applicant Milton Real Properties of Mass LLC, 100 Quarry Drive, Milford, Mass., represented by Bowden Construction, 220 Reservoir Street, Needham, Mass., for special permit under Section 6.2.4, signs permitted in the I district to increase the pylon sign's height to 100 feet tall, minus site plan review under Section 10.6.2 to modify the approved site plan. The proposed modification is to install Cape Cod berm and precast curbing instead of the approved granite curbing. The project is located at 207 Page Street, assesses map 94,
Dan, can you talk right in? They can't hear you.
lot 43, in an industrial zoning district. My understanding from the applicant is that we're not going to hear the sign request tonight. It's only going to be the site plan review, correct? Okay.
Oh.
You're on.
Great. Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Attorney Barry R. Crimmins of 909 Washington Street in Stoughton, here on behalf of the applicant. With me here tonight is Ms. Shawn McGinnis, who is with Bowden Construction, the general contractor for the building. If you haven't been up to see the building, I believe all the steel. Shawn, is
Yep,
now up.
we've topped it
So
off. Yep.
it's well under construction. This property originally received site plan approval back in February of 2021. Thereafter, there was a modification granted in February of 2022 when we acquired the property on Page Street adjacent to us in that lower left-hand corner, which allowed us to square off the property in that area. The current application, again, as you read, Mr. Chairman, is a minor modification relative to the on-site curbing that Sean will speak about momentarily. The reason we're asking for a continuance on the hearing relative to the sign is the client, Mr. Brad Farron, could not be here tonight due to an issue with his father's health. So he is out of state, and actually our sign contractor likewise could not be here tonight. So we are requesting a continuance of that public hearing, but we are going forward with the application for minor site plan modification relative to the curbing. So I'd like to introduce Shawn to the board and ask her to explain what it is that we're doing.
Great. Thank you, Barry. So I'm Shawn McGinnis. I'm with Bowden Construction. I know you all have the drawings in front of you, but I did bring a larger set, and I did not realize that we would actually have a video as well.
Yeah.
So,
If you want, I can just highlight it for you.
sure, yeah, that might be easier. Okay.
We'll talk to the granite first.
Sure, yep. So the granite, the project was approved with granite curbing throughout, at the entrance points, at the curb cuts, at the entrance points, as well as throughout the site. And our request tonight is for approval to change the curbing within the site. So in the diagram that you're looking at, everything shown in red, that is granite curbing that we would like to keep as granite curbing. So we do not want to change that curbing at all. As you can see, it's the curb cut into the site. The lower in the diagram, south on the drawing, that is the entrance, that is the visitor entrance and the public's entrance and exit at that point. So that would remain as granite curbing up to the point where the red line ends, correct, right there. North on the page, that is actually exit only for the trucks. So we're proposing that that remains as granite curbing basically where it meets the street. So where you see in red, that would remain as granite curbing. The area that you see on the far right, top right of the drawing in bright green, we'd like to change that to precast. And everything else that you don't see in either green or red, we'd like to change that to Cape Cod berm. So our request really only affects the internal section of the site, the internal curbing in the site.
Why Cape Cod berm?
You know, a lot of it's driven by cost. There's been some significant cost increases in the past 2 years, and the Cape Cod berm would represent almost an $80,000 cost savings for this project. And we don't expect much damage along those sides. If there's going to be any impact, it's really going to be the backside, or in the diagram, the upper right corner where we're showing it in bright green.
And that's precast you want to do?
That's precast, correct.
When this project was approved, the reason for the vertical granite, it's been a standard with the planning board for many years that all of the internal curbing be put in as granite curbing. Where this site houses some very large equipment and stuff that could potentially break down other curbing, that was part of the reason for the granite. My concern going forward is the same concern. I did express it on the site when I was out there, is that you're going to have, you possibly could have an issue with that type of breakdown on the granite curbing. I don't disagree. The public isn't going to be able to see it. It's going to be more so the client. However, you do have wetlands and some other areas in the back that, since the time I've spoken to the clients when I was out there, I had a little bit more chance to look over the drawings and stuff, and I did notice that, you do have some wetland areas. And so how do we work on the maintenance of that curbing if it starts to break down or things start to go forward? Where do we come up with repairs and maintenance of that curbing, as that wouldn't happen with granite curbing?
Mm-hmm. Yep, understood. Milton Cat owns quite a bit of property. They're very good at taking care of their property. I've been to many of their sites, and I believe that they will have a maintenance plan in place and enforced for the repairs to the Cape Cod berms as repairs are necessary.
And, Mr. Chairman, we can require a revised maintenance plan on how they're going to maintain the Cape Cod berm and the update their O&M plan, because that's required on how they're going to maintain everything.
Go ahead.
Approximately how many lineal feet will you be replacing or propose to replace?
I actually honestly don't remember the linear footage number.
Okay.
I meant to look that up this afternoon, and I ran out of time. I apologize, I don't have that.
Okay.
Oh, it's hundreds of feet, I can see.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is, yep.
Perhaps if we would consider Cape Cod berm, we could request that you build up the landscaping behind that so that there's a barrier. As if the Cape Cod berm broke down, it would still continue to force the water out away from the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just suggesting maybe that you could design something in that respect if we were going to go. But I can see the need for the granite curbing myself,
Yeah, when I was out to the site a couple of weeks ago, the grading and the way things are going seem to be very, very tight. They have some really tight constraints as far as what their grading goes. I'm not sure how much they'd be able to change that. I'm not sure how much they'd be able to change that going forward. I would see, they could go the best they could, but I'm not sure there's much they can change on that. It's the granite curbing was what was there to be able to protect that going forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anybody else have any questions?
I just a comment. I have no issue with the precast curbing, but I'm not a fan of Cape Cod berm.
And the issue here is protecting flow into the wetlands. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there should be a pretty good cost savings just going to precast from granite to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else on the board? Anybody from the public would like to speak on this matter? Yes, sir, Mr. Zorino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Semanian, 5 Low Avenue. I am deeply concerned about, I would agree with Mr. Demuse's statement about precast, but to go with Cape Cod berm here is exposing the wetlands. This is a large facility for large equipment. There's a lot of fluids, oils, hydraulics. I also have a little bit of a concern about precedent. I mean, there was a project that through the CPC that came to you, and you required granite curbing on that at a great expense to that project. We accepted it because it was the right thing to do from a safety perspective and a containment perspective. That property, you'll note, is the Capon property, also is exposed to the wetlands. So I have deep concern about this, and I hope you'll consider the public's concern in this case. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Crimmins.
If I may, just a quick comment.
You got the mic issue, Barry.
I've never been told I can't be heard, but
Neither have I until tonight.
Yeah. I just want to let everybody know, board and the public as well, and along the lines of what Sean mentioned, Milton Cat owns this property. This is not a lease. So they're invested, heavily invested, as you can well imagine, in this property, and it only is in not only in the public's best interest, but in their best interest as well to maintain the property. We have no objections if the board were to condition its approval on, as Mr. Roth said, updating the O&M plan, and having a condition that the berm be maintained. However, the only other thing I would add, to allay any concerns the members may have relative to the Cape Cod berm, we could live with doing the precast concrete in place of the Cape Cod berm, if that were the wish of the board.
Bill, would you have...
Mr. Chairman, Craig also, our Assistant City Engineer, is on, and he has a comment on it.
I'd like to hear his comment. I'd also like to know if you have the plan C-104 that we can put up, the grading plan. Go ahead, Craig.
From the original? No, I don't.
You don't?
I don't.
Okay.
Oh, I'll look.
Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, the one comment or a couple of comments that I wanted to add was that section where they're proposing Cape Cod berm adjacent to the wetlands is also protected with a guardrail. So there's a steep slope and a guardrail there as well. So the Cape Cod berm would be on the pavement and the guardrail behind it. So if damage did occur to the curbing, the guardrail's right behind it. So I think that's going to keep that area protected rather well. And this type of Cape Cod berm is a little different than what people are used to seeing, the rolled asphalt berms. The way they build them today, they're monolithic with the top course of pavement. So you don't have like that loaf of asphalt that's just kind of placed on top of the pavement. It's rolled, with the top course of pavement. So it's one blended unit. We'd use that on our roads in town in a lot of areas, and it does prove to be pretty durable. So just wanted to provide those comments. Thank you.
Craig, is that guardrail is behind the berm, so a snowplow or something, the guardrail isn't going to stop, a plow from hitting that?
No, but it provides that visual barrier so that they're not just going to go barreling along and not realize there's a curb there. The guardrail's right behind it, so that they'll see that sticking up above the snow, so that they know that that's not an area where they're going to head towards it at 25 miles an hour and bust through. So.
Okay.
Do you have the detailed profile you're using for the Cape Cod berm?
I don't have that with me. I don't have that drawing with me.
Yeah. It's generally a 4-inch rise at the backside, and it's a 12-inch wide berm. So it has a little lip at the edge of the pavement to control the runoff on small storms, and then it rises up you know, 4 inches over the course of 12 feet, 12 inches wide, so.
Craig, and the reason I was asking for the drainage plan is I don't recall whether there's any catch basins along that exit road. There's a pretty good grade along there, and I've had issues on previous sites with this similar curb where the water just runs right over because there's only a 4-inch rise and it slopes off. And I can't remember whether there's anything picking that up as it's coming down that slope.
Yeah, I don't have that plan in front of me either, Dan, but we could require that they use granite throat stones at all catch basin locations.
Well, it's not just the catch basins. It's my point is if it's coming down that road and it doesn't get, the catch basins get overrun, or there's not catch basins on that exit. I'm looking at the exit road more so than the entrance road, Bill, because of the grade coming through that exit road.
Oh, the exit?
Yeah, the exit has a very steep grade coming down into the site, and the way the water's going to run down that road, if it's not getting picked up properly, either by catch basins, by the time it gets to that rear corner, it's going to have a tendency to want to overrun a Cape Cod berm where it wouldn't on a vertical granite curb. Those are where my concerns are in this whole thing. And I know when we walked the site last week, I was looking at it just strictly from, you know, an aesthetic and a structural point of view, but when I started looking at the grading plans in my office, I looked at what was going on with the conservation. That kind of concerned me in the overall point of this. And that's what I was trying to bring up when we're talking about this. That's why I think that the curb, more so than just even a visual or braking, is what happens is the runoff, and if it breaks, well, how do we control that down the road? And you know, Milton Cat's spending a lot of money on stormwater management on this site, a lot of money, and to them to have curbs that just overflow and not be able to control what they're doing isn't right either. I'm not looking for them to overspend money, and I don't want them to spend money foolishly, but maybe there's areas that we have to look at, you know, either where the turning radius is, you know, back up for catch basins, that those areas are granite curb, those types of things. Look at that roadway coming down so that it may not be that, you know, you're getting 100% of Cape Cod berm. Maybe, you know, we need another still 20 or 30% of vertical granite, maybe 40% of granite curb in different areas to maintain where we are. If not, maybe it has to be 100% to be able to do what we need to do when we look at the overall. I'm trying to just bring it out there, but I don't think that when we're looking at this, especially from a drainage standpoint of view, it's going to work the way it is right now.
And I am totally in agreement with what you've just said, that, you know, we need a little bit more detail on how the water will flow. You know, maybe even consider if we had a 2 or 3 inch rainfall, what would happen.
Especially this season.
That would be a small rainfall, but.
I have a question for our town engineer, Craig. What is the height of the precast curbing versus the height of vertical granite curbing?
The reveal on the precast would be 6 inches, just like the vertical granite.
Thank you.
And they're usually 18 inches, 12 inches is in the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, and the asphalt curb, you said, Craig, was a 4-inch profile?
That's correct, Dan.
So,
Thank you.
at this point, I would think that I'm sorry. At this point, I think you might want to request a continuance.
Right, I think I heard from the,
Oh, I'm sorry, just one more thing. Did you have something, Peter? Sorry.
I had actually a question, comment. One of the questions is as far as, what's that?
Get it closer, Peter.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. One of the questions I have is as far as snow stockpiling, where does the snow end up in relationship to where you want to go to the Cape Cod berm, you know? So I'm not.
I think it's down south on the plan.
I don't think it's on this plan, but there was a
No, I
plan
don't
that
think
showed
it
where it
doesn't
stopped.
show,
On the other plans that we approved,
Yeah.
there was a snow stockpile area. I don't remember where it was.
Yep, there was, it has been approved. I believe it's down south on the plan, in the area where we have that longer stretch of granite that we're keeping, but we'll double check that as well.
I think it's over in there, and there's another
Yep.
area that was on the other side. It was both sides of the lot, if I remember correctly, but.
Yep, mm-hmm.
Anything else?
And the other concern that I would have is, on this project, if you maybe open up the floodgates on other projects coming down the pike where they say, well, if you did it here, you could do it with our project.
Yeah, but each project is its own merits. I don't think that's, I'm not going to get into a precedent thing right now.
Okay.
We have our standards. The standards have always been that we had, or that there's been since I've been on the board, it's been vertical granite curbing throughout the sites. That's just been a planning board standard. It doesn't mean that it hasn't been varied on occasion on a site-by-site basis. There's been issues that's happened.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we'd probably be requesting that both hearings be continued to your first meeting in October 12th, I think Bill said.
And if we get a few more details on the water flow, and if we, especially that back corner and so on.
And
Can I have a motion to continue the meeting to October 12th? Second? Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Does that cover for both hearings?
Both hearings.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Item number 7, a new public hearing will be held at the petition of applicant Father Bills and Mainspring, 460 Belmont Street, Brockton, Mass. 02301, represented by DeSalle, Burke and Sala and Associates, Inc., 1266 Furnace Brook Parkway, Suite 401, Quincy, Mass. 02169 for site plan review under Section 10.7 to convert the existing motel, manager's building, and existing single-family residence into 24 efficiency unit apartment complex. The applicant is requesting a waiver to Section 4.1.2, Table of Dimensional and Density Regulations to allow the existing 4-foot side yard setback to remain. Section 6.1.6, Table of Off-Street Parking, and Section 6.1.7.19 to reduce the required parking from 24 space to 13 space, and allow the two-way drive aisle to be reduced from 24 feet to 20 feet. The project is located at 1919 Washington Street, Assessors Map 60, Lot 015, in a general business zoning district. Can the applicant and/or his representatives please come up and identify yourselves?
While we're unpacking, I'll introduce myself. Attorney John McCluskey, representing Father Bills and Mainspring House. My office is at 1325 Belmont Street in Brockton. I have not been before this planning board before, and hope you treat me right tonight. I'm sure you will.
We treat everybody with respect. How's that?
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Thought you were Father Bill.
So, Father Bill's and Mainspring House President and CEO John Yazwinski is with us as the team is here tonight. The engineering team is a nonprofit 501c3 corporate Massachusetts corporate entity, and under the, you may be familiar with this, but I'll go through it just in case. Under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 48, Section 3, the so-called Dover Amendment allows a nonprofit that is specializing in educational, which this is, and housing for homeless. It allows us to operate in virtually any zone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for zoning purposes, residential, industrial, commercial. They can come in and operate their facilities. Historically, you probably become familiar with Father Bill's. They've gone through many changes over the years, and the current plan, which has become very successful, is to provide housing for the homeless, to bring them back into society, to work with them. In this particular case, this is this old Stoughton Motel on Washington Street, which has, I believe, outlived its usefulness, and now we have a new objective here, is to have a have a place for people to live. I forget how many units. What are they? 22 units. 24 units. In each unit, there'll be one person. And those people will come in. Most of them won't be driving vehicles. I believe the percentage is about 10% of the population in Father Bill's will be able to drive a vehicle. We've been working with the planning department very closely. We've had some meetings with them, and we would like to present to you tonight the plan for the conversion of the Stoughton Motel into the 24 units, seeking modification in the number of parking spaces, and with the emphasis on the fact that we know most of these people aren't going to be driving. And the use is allowed by law. With that, I'd be more than happy to answer further questions or questions, but I'd like to let the team begin to show you the plan.
How's it going? My name is Cameron Campbell. I'm with DeSalle Berksala, the civil engineers for the site. And as you can see here, we have the existing conditions, and you have the 16-room motel in the front with exterior parking, and then an attached manager's house with 4 bedrooms, and then a single-family house in the rear. The parking now is 17 spaces out front, and then there's a garage, 2-car garage in the rear. And the parking as it is now is in violation of the zoning bylaw. It's built against the front property line, against the road. And also parking in the opening of the driveway. The plan, there's no sort of drainage on the site for the existing pavement. There's five approximate location of 5 septic systems, all kind of piecemealed together. So the proposal is to convert the motel into 24 micro efficiency units for 1 person each. There'll be 5 in the rear building and the other 19 up in the front. And then redo the parking and the access to the site with a 24-foot wide asphalt opening, which decreases down to 20 feet as you get to the side of the building towards the rear, with a large turning around hammerhead to be able to maneuver vehicles. And then, so it'll be 11 exterior parking spaces now in the front, pulled back from the street to allow for more of a landscape buffer to Route 138. And then to redesign it to allow for handicap parking and access to the units. All the buildings on site are staying. There was an existing pool. It's been filled in, and it's proposed to become a patio. And go to the next page. Actually, I can touch on the dumpster. Was originally against the abutter's property line, and it's being moved centrally on site to a new enclosure, concrete pad with vinyl fencing around it. Thanks. The grading on the site, essentially, there's a high point right up against next to the building, and it gets split towards the rear and towards the front. We're pitching it to a sedimentation basin along the property line here, which will be piped out to a surface infiltration basin here. There's also another curb opening right here on the plan. They're 6-foot wide, just curb openings, no catch basins, that'll feed the sedimentation basins prior to going into the surface infiltration. All the other grading essentially remains the same on the site. And then all the utilities for the site get upgraded. There is a new forced sewer that came across an easement across the 2 properties here, and they installed a new manhole at the corner of the site. And each of these buildings will be equipped with they're called E1 pump chambers, and that'll be pumped to the new forced sewer. And it'll take the 5 soil absorption systems offline. The new water will be brought on a 4-inch water main and then tapped off for the services for the houses, and then underground power off of an existing utility pole. We're asking for the waiver on the 20-foot driveway because essentially the placement of the building now, and there's a utility pole here, you can't get 24 feet between those two. And we're not expecting much traffic to come along the rear of the building. There's only 4 of the spaces there and five units. I can hand it over to the architect, Katie.
Now that's better. Better? Okay. My name's Katie Faulkner. I'm with Westwork. I'm the architect working with Cameron and team on this project at the Stoughton Motel for Father Bill's. The buildings are not changing materially in their positions on the site, but they are being upgraded. They are all going to be fully sprinklered. They're going to be upgraded to energy code with more insulation, and then they are going to be converted into micro units.
Give your mic closer.
Closer, sorry, thank you. There's some before and after photos, and I know we're not really here to talk about the design, but the landscape for the site really is quite lovely. The building itself, I think, has outlived its purpose, but the site's quite nice with a number of native species, so we really like to continue the spirit of that and actually, instead of having parking along the street, actually have a landscaped area, not too high and certainly drought tolerant and native, but hoping that will be a nice addition to the streetscape. We were going to have a lit American flag on that corner as well. The front and the appearance of the building, this is the before kind of pulling into the lot, and we tried to maintain the same view here. So not a substantially different appearance of the front of the building, but upgraded. So
it's not going to look any different?
It will look better in that we're replacing the railings. We're moving. There's at the current, you'll notice there's a canopy and stair kind of right in front of the front door, and we're proposing that be moved to the side so we have better egress on the second floor. Again, re-siding the building, new windows, new doors. So yes, actually I think it'll look quite a bit better, but not materially, not bigger, and not, again, different.
What type of siding you plan on putting in?
I think we'll be using the Hardy board. It's probably a light gray fiber cement board.
And those doors are going to stay red?
They don't have to. I mean, the red was something we threw in the rendering. We actually haven't even gotten the client approval yet, so I think might be a different color, but we do want to propose
And once we get to the final, we're going to want to see what colors.
Absolutely.
And the types of things you're picking, so
we would bring in a full finished board at that point, but mostly we wanted to show the spirit. What is going to stay? This will be currently it's a non-code compliant driftwood rail here, and it is not structurally secure enough for the use, so we will be replacing the structure here, and we will also be putting in a new metal raised rail up to 42 inches, so there'll be a lot of code and accessibility upgrades. Getting back to the sort of, I realize that the public doesn't, oops, that was not very good, excuse me. I realize the public doesn't really see the back of the building, but it is a nice backyard, and as Cameron mentioned, the pool will be filled in and landscaped as well. So the back of the house, again, will be still quite residential in scale. There are no physical addition changes, just upgrades to siding, windows, and doors.
The inside of the building, so are you renovating all the rooms inside the building? Is that the intent?
Yes, we are. We are having to move a few walls because we are going to have 2 of the units be mobility accessible and 1 additional sensory impaired unit. So, but they will have new floors, they will have accessible bathrooms, they will have new fixtures.
One of the components that attorney, you just brought up is that this is an educational piece. Can you explain to us the educational use and where it is
Sure.
located in the building and
Yeah.
how that's handled?
I will. So primarily, and I apologize, I should have a full floor plan here, and I only have partial, so I'm going to have to use the site plan if that's okay. The existing motel is an interesting structure. In fact, we think it might have actually been added on to a second floor at some point over time. It's funny, kind of interesting construction, which means a lot of added sprinklers. But in the low home in the back, which I believe was the owner's home, in the first floor area, there is a common space in the link. And there's also an office there. That is where the caseworker is. That is where people can meet with their caseworker. Primarily, there's an area where people can congregate in the kind of lower second home. But I think that most of the education happens, and I have not been working with Father Bills more than a year, but from my limited experience, it happens with the caseworkers. So there's a lot of kind of life skills and helping people do things like use public transportation, et cetera. So there's spaces where they can gather. There aren't big rooms. There's also an outdoor space here.
Katie, I can answer some of that.
Oh, thanks, John. I
education.
appreciate
No problem.
that.
Could you say who you are, please?
John Yazwinski. I'm the president and CEO of Father Bills in Mainspring. And just to answer your question, the question about the educational uses, we have about close to 700 units like this that have kind of been put in the South Shore region to support people that have been formerly homeless or at risk of homeless. So the services that we provide here is everybody here will just be a tenant. They'll be a tenant. They'll have a lease, and they'll pay 30% of their income towards the rent. But we also work with them on their education, workforce training opportunities, budgeting, adult basic ed education. A lot of people will come in with disabilities, and we'll make sure they get the services that they need. So it really is a wraparound of community-based services for them that continues to be very successful. Of all these units that we have, by providing this type of community-based support that we'll have staff here. We'll have staff here around the clock to preserve the tenancy. For all the units, we have about a 93% success rate of them remaining housed over 3 years. And we hope that people will move on, but this will provide a stability where these are people that will be permanent housing.
So this is quite a bit different than what is on Main and Spring Street in Brockton.
Yes, Mainspring House is an emergency shelter. This is permanent housing.
Okay.
Yes.
In regards to your educational programs, do you have a curriculum that you could share with this board?
In the sense of everything is just really catered to the individual person with a service plan. We could easily give you somewhat of like what are the highlights of what makes up the things that we help people with.
That would be good. Thank you. We look forward to that.
And is there's going to be staff there around the clock?
Yes, sir.
And how many people per shift? Is it 2, 4?
There's a full-time case manager who's there Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, 9 to 5, kind of business hours.
You need to identify yourself. They can't hear you. It's on TV.
Hi, John Lanham with Father Bills in Mainspring, Senior Programs Director. So we'll have a full-time case manager who's there Monday to Friday during business hours, so 8 to 4, 9 to 5 time frame. We'll then have an evening staff person on 4 p.m. to midnight, and then an overnight staff person on midnight to 8 a.m. On weekends, we'll have someone there during the daytime hours as well.
So there's basically one person. I was trying to get an idea how much of the parking would be used by staff. So it's basically one space that rotates to three people. Okay.
Could I have a comment from staff at this point?
So
I'd like
with
to know
the
what
park, sorry, with the parking you were bringing up?
Excuse me.
Correct. In all of our units, it's less than about 10% of the units here. So I think you'll have plenty of parking with the 13, knowing you'll probably have 4 or 5 tenants at any high time that would have a car.
And I assume they'll have visitors too, so.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Could, I want to get the staff's comments right now on the site and on the building as far as where we are on their reviews at this point. Either Craig or yourself, Bill, I'm not sure who has the information.
Craig, did you want to go over the engineering comment list?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Thank you. Yeah, so Bill and I both reviewed the plans and put together a review letter and comment list that is in your packet. From a site standpoint, there's a lot of good things happening here with the site. Moving the parking out of the front yard setback and providing landscaping, I think is a really good thing to do. We'll dress up the front of the property. They'll have to apply for a Mass DOT access permit, which will formalize the driveway opening. The existing condition has a couple of parking spaces that are parallel spaces along that driveway, and the proposed plan removes that. So those are a couple of good things that are occurring there. The applicant has requested the waiver to reduce the driveway width down to 20 feet, and we feel that that's a reasonable request given the site conditions with the location of the building and the location of the utility pole. Requiring the 24-foot wide width throughout there, would require moving that pole. And we just don't feel that there's an awful lot of traffic that will need to make its way to the rear of the site with the majority of the spaces located at the front. I will note that in our review letter, we had noted down that the granite curbing on the site should be provided at a minimum at the roundings at the intersection of Washington Street and the site driveway, and at least into the site back to where the driveway meets the side building facade on that driveway. Given the board may want to consider the remainder of the curbing, the applicant is proposing Cape Cod berm throughout for the rest of the site. So the board should consider the curbing types throughout. From a stormwater management standpoint, there's a lot of improvements here. So the building will be connected to the newly installed forced sewer main, which will take offline 5 leaching areas for sanitary. So that in itself will be a big improvement to groundwater in the area. And then the addition of the stormwater management, which is provided through some low impact development stormwater management techniques with curb breaks and sediment basins. And that will improve the stormwater management quality greatly, since there isn't any controls on site and no best management practices employed on the site at all to mitigate stormwater runoff. So, we have some positive things there. On the site plan, I didn't see the location of a transformer for electric service if that's required. So I do have a request that they add that to the plan if there will be one. As you know, they can be quite big, and the setbacks required by the electric companies pretty confining and restrictive as to where they can be placed. So I'd like to know where that would go on the site. And other than that, I just want to note that there is a wetland area in the rear of the site near the existing dwelling, and most of the work is shown to be outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. But that location of that wetland line has not been approved by the Conservation Commission, and we're just requesting that the applicant be in touch with the Conservation Commission to see if a filing would be necessary for this project. And I think that's about all I have at this point. And if Bill has any additional comments.
Craig, on those existing septic systems, do the tanks just get capped and left alone, or do they get smashed? And
Yeah, so they can't be just left alone. They need to either be removed, or they can you can crush the top of it. They pump it out, crush it, and then fill it with sand, so that it's abandoned according to Title V.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the proposed, I'll go to the landscape plan proposed is a significant improvement to the site as far as the site plan and our site plan review. And I've reviewed it. It looks like it complies. They've actually added front yard setback, added landscaping. The one question I have is, because when I went out and did the site visit, the pool has already, it's been filled, and so I couldn't tell. I do know, because I've had experience on another project where they just filled the pool with dirt and it floated up. So I just need to know if, and then they had to take it out and then take the sides out. From, I don't know who oversaw that demo, but have the sides and bottom been removed? It looked like there was some cutting, but I don't know what it was done, because if you don't, the dirt and everything, it will float up. So I don't know who can answer that question.
I didn't see it.
Sorry, the person that did it isn't here from our team. It's just a temporary safety measure just to fill the pool, and then it will be properly landscaped, whatever our plans are, to have a patio area there. So this is just a temporary, get rid of the water, make sure that if, as the place is closed right now, to make sure that it was safe, so nobody would fall in and everything.
Okay, so it hasn't, so the walls and the bottom have not been removed properly, so they just look like they put fill in?
Just temporarily, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You need to do that. It's going to be a mess.
Okay.
Anything else, Bill?
No, I mean, the site plan is this, what they've done with the site plan, as Craig said, and with the landscape plan from our site plan and landscape and review is, they've done significant improvements, getting rid of the septic systems. Well, they're not really septic systems, they're just cesspools, leaching fields, and the landscape and significant improvements. We don't have any more technical questions.
Okay.
As you know, under the code, it's section 10.7 under the site plan. You can, we can make reasonable review and request, and so.
Okay.
A few questions that I have here is, one is is this area serviced by BAT bus or the BAT bus shuttle system?
I don't actually know the public transit in the area very well. We were just talking about that. So I don't believe that we have easy access to a bus line. I understand people tend to be driven when they need to go do their groceries, but the public transit isn't easily accessed from Washington.
Okay.
I don't believe it's on a BAT bus line, but it's certainly accessible to dial-a-BAT and other means of transportation.
Right, because that would ease the parking requirements, but that vehicle would have to come into the area into the property.
Right.
So that would be my concern there is,
Well, the Dial-A-Bat buses are certainly small enough that they can maneuver around this property quite easily.
okay. You mentioned it's a 4-inch water main. Did the fire department say that's sufficient enough for the sprinkler system?
So it'll be before the Public Works, but when we go for building permit, they'll size it, and we'll probably have to do a flow test on the street to determine what's sufficient. But a 4-inch water main is pretty large, and it's actually only a 2-inch line going into the buildings, which is typical.
Right, well, I'm familiar with fire suppression, that's why I asked the question. Because, 4-inch water lines, you can get a lot of water, but when you need, for a fire, you need a lot of water. The question came up about how many workers on site. You said there's going to be 24/7 coverage of one person, one body, but it would be switched out. What about social services, people coming in to
So we'll certainly bring in other providers if needed to engage with those participants. A big part of the case manager's role is determining what the right appropriate service is for them and whether they're bringing them to that service at another site, or if they're having like a VNA service or maybe a veteran service officer, whoever that might be, to come on site to meet with that individual.
So it kind of leads to my next question is like Stoughton visiting nurses, for them to come in. Again, they do a great job, but again, they're going to need, I'm concerned about the parking is what I'm drilling down to. You mentioned about handicap accessibility. Is that just on the first floor? Is there going to be a lift or elevator for the second floor?
No, they have designated.
No, it's not necessary to have an elevator because we have 2 units on the ground floor that are directly accessible from the drive, and then we have a third sensory impaired also on the first floor. None of the units in the rear are accessible units.
Okay. What about the, as far as people doing laundry on site, is there going to be laundry?
There's laundry.
All right, so you have to accommodate for that with the septic, if you're on septic to be.
They're on sewer.
They're moving
going
to
be
they're
on
moving to sewer.
They're abandoning the septic and they'll be on sewer.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. And the last question would be veterans' preference. Is there anything that leads to that? Veterans, do they get a preference?
Let me go back to the VNA question. This is not a physical rehab facility, so that it's very unlikely you'd have VNA coming in and out on a regular basis. It's possible if somebody went to a hospital and then got readmitted, went back to their apartment, but that's very unusual. On the veterans issue, I don't know.
So there currently is not a veteran preference on the tenant selection plan, but we absolutely always try to look at veterans that are in the shelter system as a group that we're prioritizing for housing.
Okay, thank you.
What's the criteria for admission into becoming a resident here?
So it's individuals that are considered literally homeless, which means that they're staying at an emergency shelter or staying outside somewhere. They're engaged with a case manager, and they've been able to meet the income requirements, which is 30% of the area median income or below. So
30% of the area being what?
30% of the area median income. So their income, they have to be income eligible in order to.
Right, but you're looking at 24 units, which is fine, but if I look around towns right now, Stoughton, Brockton, this area, there's many times that people are homeless. So how do you pick the 24 people that get in there?
So in our, we have a system called coordinated entry that is something that HUD has us do for all of our housing placements. We identify individuals in shelter based on the length of time that they've been there. We look at the services that are needed for them and do kind of a vulnerability assessment of who would benefit most from housing. So as we tier that list, we come up with a score for individuals to help us really identify who would be most appropriate for long-term housing, and then we start to talk to individuals about what's the best placement for you. So if someone is from the Stoughton area or has ties to this region, we would be looking at that.
So are these one-person units, two-person units?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
only one person's allowed per unit?
Correct.
Does the board have any other? Go ahead, Richard.
I have a couple of questions. One, other than income, as you mentioned, 30% of the average. What else would disqualify someone from using your services?
In terms of housing or shelter services?
In terms of permanent housing.
So I think things that would disqualify, we run queries and background checks on individuals to kind of see what's there.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted to. Oh, yeah, so we would run those background checks. There are also vouchers that are being issued by, housing authorities as well. So they would have their own criteria for addressing or looking at someone's background to see whether they're eligible or not to come in the program.
I just want to reiterate, this is permanent housing, and it's going to be just like public housing, Section 8, mass rental vouchers. This is a standard supportive housing model that's done through fair housing, that's done right now, that the state, we follow all the guidelines like any public housing authority or any affordable housing that comes in. So we, in a sense of like eligibility and all those things, it's a selection plan that the state, local communities always use in a sense of HUD. It's HUD endorsed. It's a tenant selection plan that's pretty much mainstream throughout the country.
So
I have two more questions.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Second question is there a age limitation? Like how young?
18 and over.
Okay. And my last question is, if a homeless person meets these criteria, but they have an addiction that's needs considerable treatment, does that eliminate or have any influence on your eligibility criteria?
It's just like anybody living in our community, and if they have a lease, we need people to be a good tenant. So, everybody comes in, and it's just like going into and applying for any type of rent. They have to be a good neighbor and follow the lease guidelines.
Is you mentioned a background check?
Yep, the project will have vouchers, mass rental vouchers, and so the Regional Housing Authority will be performing the typical queries that are done in any type of public housing type of project or any type of subsidized program.
If someone has a criminal record, how would that influence the eligibility?
Yes. Yep, the Housing Authority and/or with us, there's standard keys that you do, just like Stoughton Housing Authority would do or any other housing authority says who would be eligible or not.
Thank you.
Yep.
I got one more question. Okay.
Go ahead, Peter.
I'm looking at the parcel of land. Now, did this group purchase that parcel, that complete parcel?
Yes.
So of the back section of that, is any part of that developable? Can that be developed later on down the road?
I mean, the back portion in the back is all wet. You can possibly develop this area.
Okay.
And you'd be pushing into a wetland as you got towards the back, right?
I didn't see anything for wetlands. That's why I wasn't.
It's this blue line right here.
Okay.
But the area to the left of that detention point could possibly be developed.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay. One other question I had was would you say you're the same as any type of housing authority or anything else? So what's the criteria that makes your model different than a housing authority that allows you to come in underneath the act that you're using? The Dover Act. So what's the difference between Stoughton Housing Authority and you? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, I might let John answer that first, and then I can add to it. But.
Thanks. Well, the General Housing Authority, for example, I represent the Brockton Housing Authority in Brockton on a project. They are elderly, disabled, and meet certain financial criteria. I believe that Father Bill's is a different situation where they're homeless and meet that criteria, plus financial eligibility matters. So that, at the end of the day, I don't know if you're familiar with if you've seen the Roadhouse, which is the old hotel, and what's the name of that hotel? The Roadway. The Roadway, yeah. The Roadway. The Roadhouse was a bar that I used to go to in Marshfield. The roadway, the roadway is a similar project. So when you go by there, you don't see many cars, you don't see many people. You do see them walking up and down Belmont Street, some crossing the highway to go over to Cumberland Farms, but and coming back with their some things to eat and things
Is
like that.
that the old Carlton House?
But in general, it's I think the idea here is that you want to bring people in, have them live there for a while, and hopefully move on, correct?
Again, a lot of people that will come in here, this is permanent housing, and that's really been successful because it provides stability to the neighborhood. But at the same time, if people decide they can, raise their income and move on into more mainstream housing, I think in the sense of the educational and the Dover question too is, yes, the housing side of it is just very similar to how housing authorities and things operate when it comes to going through that process. But the services, the individualized services, so you can have success in tenancies, is really the difference here. When the mission was created, that allows us to use the Dover Amendment.
Is that part of the goal, to increase their ability to move up and on?
It's always about trying to say to people, this is permanent housing, you're going to have a lot of supports, and if this is home forever, great, but if the opportunity is we can see people move on and move other people in, we absolutely support that and help that, and it does happen.
Okay.
Especially our veterans. We see our veterans that come in, a lot of times don't need 5, 10, 12 years. Thankfully, we can get them other type of resources, or they can move out once they get back into the workforce and move into more mainstream. So it just a lot of times depends too. One of our fastest growing populations is our elderly population. I think a lot of people that are 60 and over will be coming here. So it's just a matter of, we want it is permanent, but we do see people move on when they have that opportunity.
And in this situation, the difference is under the Chapter 48, Section 3, the educational component is a big factor here that allows this type of use on this property. For example, a housing authority is just to house people, to give them residence, and it doesn't have that educational component, doesn't have the on-site services. So that's the difference. That is one difference here with regard to the zoning implication.
See, that was kind of where I was leading to with this educational. I'm having a hard time grasping the educational. Right. If, in fact, you're bringing people in and moving them forward, they're not, it's semi-permanent, not permanent would be in my mind. Then I understand the Dover Amendment and how this is all working. But if it were just housing and people are going to be there forever, right, the educational component, I just see a disconnect there.
Well, when you're homeless, there's a reason typically, and it's something that's deep-seated that keeps coming back, and you need constant education, constant help.
It's really about teaching the skills of independent living.
Yeah.
That's the main goal of the program, teaching the skills of independent living. And we've seen a huge success rate. Like I said, we have over 20 plus properties that this has been going on throughout the whole South Shore with this type of model. So it's been a success, continuing.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to open this up for the public. Excuse me, I want to say something. We've created a standard with the way the public is speaking. I will give everybody a chance to speak, so don't worry about that. Limiting it to 5 minutes and limiting it to one time that you can come up. Conversation is going to be here through us, through the board, with the applicants. There's no discussing things back with the board, with the audience, and there's no discussing things into an argument with the applicant. So the discussion is going to be directly with us. The questions will be done. We will ask the questions in that way so that everybody has an opportunity to speak, okay? And I will give everybody an opportunity to speak. So all the way in the back, sir, you kind of raise your hand first, we'll kind of work our way from there. I need your name and your address where you live.
Hi, my name is Keith Jorgensen. I live at 114 South Street in Stoughton. Two questions. One, are all the residents U.S. citizens? And two, part of the educational program, is civics included?
So again, it's a question of whether they are U.S. citizens, and then there's the civics included in the educational program. I can stop it in a minute. I'll stop it after this question.
In answering the first question, I believe that everyone has to qualify from a citizenship position in order to secure housing under the law. On the civics issue, I'm not quite sure whether it's sort of a broad question. Really, the point is that where Father Bill's and Mainspring is bringing people back into line with being able to live and communicate and enjoy life and have a fruitful and productive way of life. Civics part of it,
I think it was asked earlier by one of our board members that you're going to get us to some sort of standards of what you're discussing, how you're helping people out. So I think that will kind of answer that question for us as the board going forward. So if we can get that, we'd appreciate that.
Quite frankly, this is a site plan approval process.
We understand that, but there's a lot of questions, and part of the site plan approval is for us to understand how it's going to affect the entire town and the entire neighborhood that it's in. And part of that process is understanding what your business model is. So.
And the main point is to bring people back in line with living,
Okay. So next person is looking to speak. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Reginald Brinson. Good evening, board. I live at 1909 Washington Street, directly next to them. I didn't hear about a fencing that splits my property from their property. That was one of my questions. And another one of my questions was, I see how Roadway Inn, how they have like a lot of y'all's tenants come outside to smoke. Will y'all have calming smoking areas, or will they just be loitering outside? And one more question. You claim that they don't drive, so how will they be getting groceries? Will we have will we have Roach Brothers carts outside? So those are my main questions.
Go ahead, sir.
Say, I can answer the fence question. Where they're proposing to install a 6-foot privacy fence along that whole side property line. It's a cedar plank fence that'll go along the line and then along the back of their property.
Just as a point of reference, our standard fences are a 6-foot PVC, white PVC fence, as far as our standards go.
All right, and we've gotten the comments from Mr. Roth and the engineer, and they asked for a detail on it, and we responded.
And your detail showed, we'll review that later, but your revised plans, I did take a quick look, and you use a standard detail of cedar planking, and so that'll be a comment that we'll deal with later about vinyl fencing instead.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I don't think they have a huge stick to the cedar.
No, I just make a comment. So go ahead. You can answer the next question. That's fine.
Sure. In regards to the question about smoking, I mean, as part of the reason why we wanted to do the patio space out back is to make sure people had a private, quiet space to be able to go outside and not be, hanging out front of the building. For transportation, part of the case manager's role is to ensure that people have food access, and so that could oftentimes that's them driving them to the grocery stores or local food pantries, making sure that there's supplies in the building. But another big part of it is like helping them navigate the local, transportation that's available. So, working with them on like what buses are available, or what, if they're able to do dial-a-bat or, other ride services, like just making sure that they understand how to get access to that piece. And if there are shopping carts or other things accumulating on there, the case manager of the site support would be in charge of making sure that the property is kept up to date and that they're, addressing that concern if it comes up. Yeah.
Next person, Mr. Zemanian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Zemanian, for the record, 5 Low Avenue. So this was, we were led to believe this was transitional housing. We've heard tonight that this is permanent, but we've also heard that it's transitional. There's a little bit of confusion there, and I don't know if that'll be able to be cleared up in the future. You've talked a lot about parking tonight. There's 24 units. If we want these people to become a part of society again, which is the goal of this type of housing, then they need transportation. There's no transportation on Route 138 as of right now. And to my knowledge, there's no plan by the MBTA or the BAT bus system to provide public transportation here. So a previous speaker brought up groceries, and it's a great point. I would bring up going to work. I mean, we're basing this on 30% AMI, which is approximately $40,000 a year or under. I believe the state right now is about $122,000 for 100% AMI. So I have concerns, real concerns about the lack of parking. And to put that into perspective for all the folks here, right here on Pearl Street, we have 2 housing structures, single room efficiency apartments, we'll call them. You can go now and look at either of them. Their parking lots are stuffed to the gills. The one directly across the street from us had to purchase another building to provide parking, additional parking for his building because he didn't have enough. So from my perspective, not having at least one space for each client is a non-starter. As far as the educational aspect of things go, if you call our housing authority, they will provide you with resources. So there's no caseworker on the phone 24/7, but if you can get somebody, and we are in collaboration with Taunton at this point, they offer multilingual services, they offer services for housing, they also offer services for food. We have 3, thank you. We have 3 food pantries in this town right now. We've seen a 300% increase over the last 3 years in people who need those services. I'd just like you to keep that all in mind as we move forward, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Did you want to comment?
Well, I would just say if for the use, it's permanent housing. Everybody will have a lease. It's just like any one of us leasing an apartment. They're just going to have a subsidy with that, just like anybody else that has a mobile voucher, like a Section 8 or anything like that. It's 0 to 30% median income, so that's extremely low income people making anywhere from, the average for us, for somebody that's on a fixed income, could be anywhere from, $6,000, $10,000, up to $30,000. After that, they aren't income eligible for this piece. So this is extremely low income. And I think when we look at this, just so for this group, and I know this isn't about the use, right, for this hearing, but we want to explain to everybody what we're doing here. This is permanent housing. The people that come to us that are experiencing homelessness are people that work in our communities, are working in Stoughton right now. Many Stoughton residents are coming to Mainspring House, coming to Evelyn House, the family shelter that has been in this community for over 20 years. So I think in a sense of parking even, we just opened up the roadway, 69 units, and we have, not even 8 cars. 8 cars. We have 700 units, so we know, and we have plenty of places. We have places in Hingham, in Weymouth, in Wareham that have no transportation, but we figure it out as a community how to support people that are from our community, and it's not that, transportation is not the biggest barrier here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Robert Cohn. I live down at 134 Kotlik Street. The services that this town offers, ambulance, police, fire, is anyone taking that? You take someone out in an ambulance, someone has to pay for that. We have another place a mile down. It's not the same as yours. We have to call the whole police department down to cure a problem. We don't want this. We love to take care of homeless people, but we want them to be good to the town too. Can you answer that question? Are we going to have, there's a problem here. Previous people have come in. We have other homes up in other areas. It's not your group, but the police are constantly up there. You have one person on, 24 people. If you have to call, someone calls the police department, they have to answer that call. And if you get called too much, someone's going to get charged for that. If you you have to call an ambulance and they have to take you to the hospital, someone's got to pay for that. It's either going to be you or the citizens of Stoughton are going to pay for that. Am I right? They're citizens, that's right. But citizens of Stoughton, I call an ambulance,
no,
I have to pay for that, whether it's insurance or not. Someone has to pay for that.
Goal here is to, as best we can, provide for the people that are here.
I understand, but you're not answering my question. If you summons an ambulance to that facility, who pays for it?
Well, just like anybody else, you know, if you're a citizen of Stoughton, you're living in Stoughton, if you have a medical emergency and you call the ambulance comes and takes you away.
That's right, and also you get billed by their billing company too.
Well,
so someone has to pay for that.
So these people have
Okay, sir, please keep your voice down. Okay, I understand.
I've asked the question three times and not got an answer yet.
Sir, I understand your frustration, please. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I would just say, majority of times, and I'm not sure about the Stoughton Motel, but I'm wondering how much resources was used on the Stoughton Motel as a transient motel compared to somebody that is making this their home, if they're from Stoughton or they're from this region. What we have experienced in the majority of our properties, you know, that where we take over properties or build new properties, but mostly the ones we take over that had some use is when you would speak with the public safety people like police and fire and rescue, that comparative to what the use might have been before and the use of who was going there, a lot of times it goes down when people are here permanently. It's their home compared to a transient group like a motel.
Well, I've been here for 50 years. I've used the ambulance twice. And the people of Stoughton that call 911 or call the ambulance gets charged. I'm trying to bring a point.
Right.
Who's going to pay
I don't think, Mr. Cohen, he has an answer, and it's going to end up being, as you said before, it's going to be a taxpayer issue. It's what it ends up being.
Another question I have.
Yes.
In these units, do these people cook in there? How do they get fed?
These are efficiency apartments.
So there is some, it's something, there is some.
It's an apartment just like anybody lives. It's
I never
a
was at the
kitchenette.
Stoughton Motel,
No, Stoughton Motel does not have them. We're putting kitchenettes and renovating each room.
What else I have? And a question was asked, the people that you get in, and I hate to say this, are you getting immigrants into your place coming in from the border? Question was
They made a statement that they have to be United States citizens to become in.
United States?
That's what they just made that statement that with the criteria they have to be United States citizens.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Could I have the next person?
I think if the green light's on, it's on, right? Dick Fedorowicz from South Street in Stoughton. I've been in 6th generation of Stoughton, and I've actually driven by your facility on Main Street in Brockton, and unfortunately, I had to pull over to let 2 ambulances, fire engine, and 2 police cars pull into your facility. And when I saw what was on the side of the road, there was needles everywhere. And I understand there is a serious, serious need to take care of our homeless. But we were a town of 28,000. I believe we're close to 29 maybe right now. And our resources are somewhat limited. The last time I called an ambulance, it was $1,700, and that was about 10 years ago. So, but we have a small police department, we have a relatively small fire department, and without the Stoughton Motel being on a public transit route, I just don't, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's the right place. I know there's a strong need for people to live, but I also know that there's an awful lot of office buildings totally empty all over this country because of COVID. And, I might suggest that you might be looking at, some of these office buildings that are not going to be occupied again because most people are working from home. So,
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. Yes, ma'am.
Is it on? Oh, I did. Okay, hello, I'm Charlene Terry Booker. I live at 1845 Turnpike Street. My father, I'm here for my father. He lives at 1902 Washington Street, right across from the motel. I like what you're trying to do. I know homeless people need help, but it doesn't seem like it's very well thought out. The site, the motel is a good site for it, probably, but the location is not. There is no public transportation. I grew up at that house. There is no public transportation. And to have one person on site, it doesn't seem like that's adequate enough as far as the staffing to really help people succeed and to transition, to get a job. There's no transportation unless something is arranged. So my concern is that there's just going to be people that get moved to that location that were homeless, that really have nothing to do, that don't have the adequate support, and they're going to be loitering and walking to Roach Brothers. It's not like downtown Stoughton where you could walk to get food, or there's other services that may be provided. It's just mostly residential. Or you walk down the street, they're going to be walking up 138. So that is my concern.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You can speak. If
Just to say, if that we have sites that are a little bit rural, like if this isn't rural, but suburban, that have been very successful, that are typical, similar sites in a sense of without public transportation, been very, worked out very well for all parties, the neighborhood, the community, and the people that just want a home like all of us here tonight. And many of these people,
do you think you could,
of course.
Do you think you could provide us with some of those addresses? Maybe we could, as a board or some of the public might be able to go by and see exactly how some of those sites work that with the transportation issues?
We absolutely, of course, anybody here, if people want to come and see the roadway or come and see a site, would welcome that.
Thank you.
So you think one person for 24 residents is going to be adequate to provide, the services that they need? And what's the plan after 3 years, or what do they transition to next, or?
We've had housing for over 20 years at Father Bill's in Mainspring. I think people think of just the shelter like Mainspring House, like the gentleman said. That's a shelter that's very different. So again, this is permanent housing. The one staff is more of to be there for people when they need stuff, but there's caseworkers there also. So working with them on individual plans.
So what percentage of...
It's just like apartment building or anybody that's in the community.
What percentage would you say are working typically in these type of?
This particular, in our shelters, any given time, 25 or 30% of people are working, and more people are trying to work. This population here will be more of a disabled population, people maybe that are elderly or have a disability. There could absolutely be people that are working there or that will get jobs while they're working there, as will help them get jobs.
And so the other people, they're just staying there all day unless there's no activities, there's no...
It's just, the people there are just like every single family house in our community, it's their home, and they'll have family to go to. They'll go out to the movies. They'll go to maybe to a training program. If they're a veteran, they'll go to the VA. It's just like anybody else in our community.
Except there's really no transportation. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, I'm sorry, we only allow one time up. I'm very sorry. No, sir, that's the rules we have. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Hi.
Just speak up, I'm sorry. There you go.
I'm Paulette Fedorowicz from South Street,
Yes, ma'am.
and I was wondering, do Stoughton residents get preference? Stoughton, people from Stoughton, do they get preference?
No, and it's not our rule. This will be a state-funded project.
You'll just be bringing homeless from other communities into Stoughton, basically.
And again, it will be a tenant selection process that will target people that are in this area, and people that become homeless in the greater Stoughton area are coming to Mainspring. So that is the targeted catchment area of people, and many people from Stoughton will want to move back to the community and live in this property.
All right, and another, you said one question?
No, I said you can ask 5 minutes of questions.
Oh, okay.
Just only get up one.
My other question is, people are going to need to go to doctors, they're going to have to maybe go to the movies. How are they going to get there? Are they going to call a cab? Are they going to order things from Amazon and have Amazon trucks come in? The parking is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It's not going to work. People are going to be parking on the street. It's just not going to work. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to take my five minutes. Thank you.
I am too.
The minutes are ticking.
Well, I just sat down, so that now it starts ticking. I got you. All right, thank you very much. Bob Mullen, 19 Clover Lane, Stoughton resident.
Mic closer, please.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me now? A little better? Can I ask, was there any conversation with this group with the Stoughton Housing Authority? Because Stoughton Housing has a 3 to 6 year waiting list. So I would ask that somehow you do encourage Stoughton residents to go down there first. You know, there's always waivers. You're asking for waivers here tonight, ask the state for waivers. Go to the governor's office, do what you can. You know, so you don't have to answer that right now, just a rhetorical question. I think you should do that if you want to come to Stoughton. The other question I have is, in lieu of taxes, since you're a nonprofit, you won't be paying real estate taxes, right?
For our housing, we will do payment in lieu voluntarily.
Okay, I was going to ask that question.
We do it with all of our rental housing.
Can I ask, what are you going to pay, like what that tax rate would be and what the tax amount would be, or are you going to pay a very small amount?
We usually do about 30%.
30%? Yep. Do you think you could go a little higher? Well, we're all struggling here, working, paying taxes, and the last thing we need is, even though you do a great job, I'm sure, in other communities, we're all struggling to pay our taxes. So if you come into our community, someone's going to make up the difference. I know I can't. If you want to move to Stoughton and pay your fair share. All I'm asking is to pay your fair share. That's all we're asking. If you can't do that, I'm sure there's wonderful other towns around the neighborhood, around the state to go to. But please try to pay your fair share for all of us. Thank you. The next question I have is, how am I doing on time, guys? Okay?
You're 2.5 minutes.
Oh, come on. Your clock is running
I'm watching the clock
fast.
behind you, Bob.
Yeah.
I'll put
All
it
right.
on tape.
My clock is a little slower.
Oh, no.
All right, next question I have is security. A lot of people are asking about people coming and going. Are you going to provide some type of 24-hour round-the-clock security?
So
you can answer that at the end because I have more questions, okay? I don't want to run out of time. Thank you. I apologize, but I'm going to keep going. The other thing I do ask is, you mentioned it's educational. Under the Dover Amendment, it's either educational and/or religious. It's not religious, right? Even though it's Father Bill's, it gives you the connotation it is religious, but all educational. On your educational definition, it sounds like my household when I was raising my kids too. I should have probably came under the Dover Amendment too, because unless you have a established educational curriculum and you have an educational director there, do you have one there? If you can answer that at the end, I'd appreciate that answer. The other thing is I would ask this board, planning board, that do not support reducing the number of parking spaces from 24 to 13 parking spaces. The last thing we need is parking all over the place out there. If it's an efficiency apartment, everybody else in an apartment, they have a parking spot. Don't do a disservice to the town by reducing the number of parking spot requirements. It's important. People will be coming and going. And I guess the other question you can answer at the end of my segment here is, are you going to enforce only one person in the apartment? And how are you going to enforce that? Are they going to be allowed visitors? How many visitors in each efficiency apartment? And at what time of day is there any type of security there over how many people are in those efficiency apartments? And they're allowed to have guests overnight? Those are our concerns, okay? I have a lot of other things, but I think I'm out of time. I appreciate this planning board and hope I get some answers because I'm going to be pushing up. If they don't answer these questions, I'm coming back. Okay, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Do you want me to?
Go ahead. You can answer the questions.
So I'll try, and then I'll turn over to John too. So for the unit size, we set the square footage based on the health department code, so that if somebody that really, it's much easier than we don't have to go through an eviction. If somebody decides to have someone else living there, it's literally a health code violation, and we can move them out as quick as possible. So that answers kind of the people living there on that one.
I think part of that was the visitors, or how do you maintain, how many people are living there, at a period of time? I mean, you're saying that, okay, it's only one person.
It's 24. Yep.
Excuse me?
It's 24 people because it's 24 units. Yep. The Dover Amendment with educational use, Father Bill's has done Friendly Dover with multiple communities, with multiple projects through the years, and we feel very confident and comfortable going forward with the Dover Amendment here, just like we do with every project. Dover Amendment, thankfully, is a good tool for all of us to help our most vulnerable population in the community.
In terms of visitors coming, like, we don't allow people to have overnight guests in any of our housing programs. That's partly why we want to have the staff that are there in the evening and overnight hours, so they can be, watching kind of who's on the property. If there's a concern that needs to be addressed, they're there on site to make sure that they're managing it. We don't have a paid security team that's there, but the site support team that's there, part of their role is site security and, making sure that things are being handled properly. There's also going to be cameras on site as well, so they can monitor the entrances and exits and the kind of public areas, just to kind of see what's going on around the building. And as John said, it's a single person per the unit. We do want to encourage people to have family and friends come. It is their home. That's part of the transportation support. If a family member is able to come, bring them to a doctor's appointment, bring them to a religious service, whatever it might be. But we have defined hours for all the guests, and those are part of the tenant agreements that they sign.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak at this time? Okay. Is there any more comments on the board? Come on up, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mary Connors. I practice at 1935 Washington Street. We have a beautiful parking lot in the front of my spot and behind my spot. So I've been listening to everything. It sounds to me, if there is a problem, there is somebody that we can contact and speak with. Joe was great as being, involved with the motel. If there was ever a problem, I reached out to Joe and I said, Joe, there's a problem. And he took care of it because he was a man. So I'm hoping the same thing. I'm interested in seeing how you're going to help people because that's a great thing to do. And I help people all the time. But I did hear what Ms. Booker said back there and about people walking the streets up to Roach Brothers and coming back. So again, I'm hoping that we'll be able to call somebody over there and say, hey, there's a problem. You got to help out.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we want to make sure here is, like, we are not, you're right, an absentee landlord. We will be here, and we will connect with you and all of our butters to say, here's the communication, this is how to communicate with us. We do that. And the other thing I want to say to everybody here is, we are part of Stoughton. We've had the family Evelyn House here on Prospect Street since 2002. And I think if you go to that neighborhood and you go to all the neighbors there who were concerned with it, now I think we've alleviated all those concerns. So, we aren't guests here tonight. We're part of this community. We serve a lot of families and individuals and veterans from this community. We rent a lot of units in this community and have people living there in Stoughton. But yeah, right, this is a housing project that we're building, and we're really looking forward to helping our fellow neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak? Okay. I would think you're going to request a continuance tonight, and I would like to give a couple of points on, unless you think you want us to vote on this tonight.
My understanding is that we were asked to make some changes to the plans, which we did, but then we were asked not to submit those changes until we maybe heard from the board with other issues.
And
I don't
which
think
you've
there are
heard
any
tonight,
other
so
issues.
I'm assuming you're going to ask for a continuance.
Well, I think we have to because
Okay, that's fine.
we were asked by the planning
Well,
department.
I think there's several things. There's going to be the comments that the staff is going to have on your updated plans that needs to come in. I personally, and I don't know about the board, but I personally need some additional information. You've got several waivers you're asking for. I think there needs to be some better explanation for those waivers and why you think you need those waivers. The educational piece, you're going to provide us with something on how that educational piece works, which I think is going to be part of what we need. You've heard a lot tonight about transportation. Part of our site plan review is transportation and how it affects the entire community. We need to know how that, if I come in there myself and I'm homeless and I need to go get groceries, or I need to go to the movies, or I need to go to work, what are you going to do as an education to me to be able to do that? And how do we go about that? And how does that affect the rest of the community? And I think that's part of the questions you need to answer for us for this board. The curbing, it was mentioned about the asphalt curbing. I think you were here, you heard our concerns about vertical granite curbing. That is a standard for our board, and I think that's something that I'm not sure why we would waive it in your particular incidence in this going forward. The fencing is another concern, is that fencing has to be all the PVC fencing that we have.
What's the concern with the fencing? So
you're putting up cedar fencing. Our fencing that we require in the town, or that we use a standard in the town, is a PVC fencing. That's standard. The parking situation, I struggle with the parking. One of the projects you actually heard here tonight, I was on the board years ago when that was, and we would not give them relief for a storage facility. So I don't know why we would give release for somebody with apartments. I mean, the big thing in this town is parking. We require a certain amount of parking with each one of the residential units in the town. It's not something that we waive very easily, so going after 50% of the parking that we would normally have seems to be a little bit of a stretch to ask for, and I'm not sure, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know who's going to move in. I know what your historically you have, but I don't know what that's going to be going forward, unless you guys have a way of getting around it. You can convince this board that that's the way you can do it. That's up to you, but that's up to you to present to us in the next hearing that you come before us.
Okay.
Okay? So with that being said, is 30 days enough time for you, or would you want to go further than that?
Yes.
So what is that, October 12th?
You're stacking that October 12th meeting?
I don't really want to. So I'm saying is, do we have any room on October 12th? If not, let's go to the next meeting. Because I don't know everything you've got set up for that. If there's not enough room, let's go to the next meeting.
You have the two previous projects. So it would just be 3 projects that I know of.
Then I want to close the meeting. We'll bring them in, but we'll close the meeting at that.
Okay.
All right? So can I have a motion to extend this to October 12th?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Pete. I went out of my mind. I'm sorry. Go. Bill, we're just going to take a 2-minute recess. 2-minute recess. 2 minutes is given. A new public hearing. Excuse me, gentlemen. Excuse me, everybody. Our hearing is continuing. Please leave. Please leave. You're not going to stay. Excuse me, everybody. Our hearing is continuing. Please take it outside. Thank you. A new public hearing will be held at the petition of the applicant, Stoughton Planning Board, to consider and to hear public comment on proposed amendments to the Town of Stoughton zoning bylaws and zoning map as follows. A portion of the parcels 070 through 104 and 082 through 034, currently zoned general business zone RC, residential suburban C zone as shown in Figure 1. The portion of parcel 068 through 235, currently zoned general business zone to RC residential suburban C zone, and portion of parcel 068 through 236 and 068 through 238, currently zoned general business zone to RU residential urban zone, as currently shown in Figure 2. The portion of parcel 067 through 301 and 067 through 298, currently zoned general business zone to an RU residential urban zone, and a portion of the parcel 067 through 300 and currently zoned RU residential urban zone to GB general business zone as shown in Figure 3. Mr. Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things when I first got hired, you guys told me to look at the map and if there's any kind of cleanup and different things. So I'm going to go with the first figure. This is owned by the town. It's up on Glen Echo. It's an old, isolated general business parcel, as you can see. It's been purchased. It's a conservation. It's for active and passive recreation. What we're looking at proposing is to, there's no need for this general business zone, so we're proposing on rezoning it to the RC district. So that's what we're looking at doing on the first one. The second figure is piece of property. It's 3 properties. Right here at 100, this is the senior center. The town owns parcel 068, lot 235, and then there are 2 parcels that are owned by one individual. There's an existing 2-family residence here. Was a a historic commercial use there that's no longer there. So what we're looking at doing is recommending to clean the zoning map up, is to remove this general business square, rezone the town parcel to RC, and then take the RU district and move it back to the entire, what the gentleman's property is zoned. In fact, having a general business district zone over a residential, on a residence, single-family residences, two-family are not allowed. So part of this makes his property legal, existing non-conforming. So what we're looking at doing is, making it conform, to this residential use. And then
Have you spoken to the?
I have spoken, well, I've written letters, I've reached out and written letters and dropped off my business card at all of the places. I've spoken to Mr. Limby that owns these two. He came into my office, I explained what it was, and he had no objections. And then I'm still trying to reach out to the other ones. Then figure 3 is actually the assisted living facility is 239 right here, that the Lewis Assisted Living. A corner of their property is a fraction of corner right here is zoned general business. I did discuss it with Attorney Morris, what they did. And then there is an existing package store, but a portion of the property, which has some of their parking and use on it, is zone residential. And then a significant portion of 215, which is a single-family residence, is legal non-conforming, existing non-conforming. What we're looking at, what the recommendation would be, is to take the small sliver off of the 290, the 239, make the entire package store parcel zone general business, so there's no non-conforming issues on the back corner, and then remove the general business off of 215 to make it a conforming lot, because it's a single family, it's a existing residence.
Have you spoken to that person?
I have not been able to speak to them, and I stopped in to the package store, and the owner was not there.
Okay.
So I've spoken to them, but I have not spoken to this resident, and so it's this one I'm still trying to get a hold of. So I was hoping to on a Thursday, because when we work late, to go, because a lot of people work, so when I'm here during the day, Monday through Friday, but except for Thursdays, we're late in the evening. So but individual letters, not just sending an individual letter that described exactly what we were proposing and how it affected their parcel, was mailed with the legal notice and a color copy of this. So I've done that to all of the property owners.
So what's the next steps at this point in time? Sorry. What is your next step at this point in time? We're trying to get ready for this for the fall town meeting.
Correct.
Is what we're trying
So if you want to, we're taking public testimony. You can, if you wanted to continue it to the next meeting, but there is a time period where you'd have to look at making a recommendation.
Okay.
To town meeting.
You have any question?
When you sent out this through the mail, did you do return receipt requests?
I sent it regular mail and certified.
Okay.
So I did both. Normally, we would only send certified, but I sent it regular mail, because sometimes people see the certified thing and they're like, they don't go sign for it. So I did it both ways.
Anybody else on the board have any questions on this?
Did it say we need, an answer from you or something, or?
No, it doesn't. I mean,
Because if somebody owns a piece of property and
yeah,
They should.
So I'm still trying to reach out to it's two owners. It's the package store owner and 215.
If you were to go and the owner of 215 was to sell their property now, without this change, would that affect the sale of the property?
No, because it's a legal non-conforming. What it really affects is if they want to come in and they want to do an improvement and they want to get a building permit, depending on what they're doing and the scope of it, it could affect them, improving.
They may have to go to a zoning hearing or something. They may have to go to a zoning hearing or something.
They could have to go to a zoning hearing versus,
Okay.
Anybody else on the board? Anybody from the public like to speak? Yes, Mr. Zemanian.
For the record, Mark Zemanian, 5 Low Avenue. This is boring stuff, but good stuff. I commend Mr. Roth for his efforts to do this. I have just 2 small comments. One, there's a lot more of this in northern Stoughton, in North Stoughton itself, right in this area that you've been working on. So perhaps in the future, the planning board would consider or the town planner would consider looking at all the non-conforming properties. There's a number of issues like this that have overlapping. So just a thought for the future.
Mark, I decided I'm new here, and I wanted to take the
Low-hanging fruit.
The chairman and I had a conversation about taking the low-hanging fruit and let's just do these 3. So
understood.
I did
just
this,
asking you to consider it for the future. Thank you.
There are others, but we wanted to just take the first 3 that were the low-hanging fruit because I don't think town meeting, to the best of my knowledge and looking at it, town meeting has never had some of these cleanup issues, and I think this is a good. These are very straightforward. Nothing simple, but these are straightforward. And then as as they start to understand, how we're trying to clean it up, then we will move to I think some of the more difficult ones.
Thank you.
That's the plan. That's the chairman and the planning board's goal.
And I appreciate your consideration, both of you, on that. The second piece is actually in relation to town meeting. In the article, it gives the lot and map numbers. It's going to be really helpful for us as town meeting representatives if we can see this.
This is included in the package.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Because a lot of people are asking already, well, where are these? And there's a lot of speculation.
And there is a detailed, there is a 1-page narrative that I submitted to the FinCom.
I assumed you would, but thank you for that. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very welcome. Anybody else would like to speak? Go ahead, Peter.
Just to kind of carry on for the statement that Mark made, I think when I first saw this, I came and I saw you. If you had the actual address assigned with the lot numbers, it would make it easier for people to pick up exactly where it is. So again, these lot numbers, the general public, it means nothing to them.
So we'll take and I'll look at adding addresses in the future.
We'll train you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy, the street numbers are located on each plot. 239.
They're located on the maps.
Huh? What's that again?
They're on the maps. They're not on verbiage, right, but they're not in the verbiage. What they're asking for is to be put in the verbiage.
Okay.
When I went to look to the Patriot Ledger to see where this was, I believe you put this in the Patriot Ledger, correct? Yeah. That's what brought me to the, well, where is this?
Yeah. And in addition, on the planning board's webpage, there is a separate page strictly for this rezone amendment that has everything on it.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, I think to be able to move this along, unless there's any objection from the board, I think we'd like to take a vote to recommend that these zoning changes be put forth within the next town meeting, and with an affirmative that we would like to see this done. I second it.
When you say the next town meeting, are you referring to the special town meeting?
Yes, this is already on the warrant.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do now is just to say as a board, we recommend this from the board. That is affirmative.
Okay.
Can you second this?
I thought somebody else did second.
He did.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
You're all set, Bill.
All right, what do we got
And
left?
the next thing, general business, we have set of meeting minutes from Thursday, August 24th. I've already reviewed these, and I have no issues. Anybody else have any
I
questions?
have no issues, I went through these.
So,
Motion to
okay.
approve the minutes of
August 24th.
August 24th.
Can I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Other business, we have a gentleman from the audience that would like to speak, and I will give him an opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Dick Fedorowicz, South Street in Stoughton. I live in the historical octagonal house, built back in the early 1800s. I went through a bunch of nonsense with this town when they built 2 office buildings alongside me, raised the site level, built one of the office buildings without a building permit. And I'm very disappointed that this town is being sold for industrial use. You know, my family came here from the Ukraine, 12 and 13 years, they were old, came into Boston, worked their fannies off, and was able to eventually buy that piece of property. And I've been there for 6 generations. I was born in that house, and I currently live in that house. And it seems like every time we turn around, you're putting more and more business everywhere in town. And we're losing everything we're supposed to have. We're a community. We're a town of residents. You know, the board of directors, the board of selectmen, they're supposed to be working for the individuals in town. And it seems like everybody is working for industry, pulling more industry in because we can't curb our spendings. Now, I understand I watched one of the meetings about the, up on Page Street, and somebody says, oh, we're going to make $2 million on taxes on that. But then they turn around and spend $1 to $2 million rehabbing a train station. So what are we doing in town? The town needs to go back to the residents of Stoughton. We had 28,000 people when I graduated from high school. We raised 2 boys. They played soccer and hockey and football and baseball all through town. They both went to college. This town served them well. And I'm just so concerned that every parcel of land, including the Campanelli Industrial Park, that you want to encroach right on people's back doorsteps on South Street. You're trying to rezone that currently to go back to industrial. And the wife and I had that rezoned back in the 80s for residential because we wanted to save our community. We have 9 houses on our street, and we don't want to live with a 3- and 4-story building in some of my neighbors' backyards. And that's exactly what's going to happen if it gets passed. So I'm sorry I'm grumpy, but I'm old. But, I'm seeing what's happening to town. And, 600 trucks a day and there's no way you're going to keep them coming down 138. They're going to come all through town. And if there's 600 trucks a day coming for that one site, then there's got to be another 600 trucks leaving. So guess what? That's 1,200 trucks. And the 90% of our population of town is unaware of it because everything got pushed through you know,
Sir,
Copenhagen.
sir, I'm gonna stop you there because factually, you're not talking correctly. And I've been through every one of the meetings. I've been in them. I've been in other meetings to deal with the traffic issues and the truck issues in that end of town. Now, what you're not saying is correct. So until you're going to get the facts straight and you read through the traffic reports and you read through what's been presented by the people, then come back and talk to me about it. That's fine. But I'm not going to go into a history of that site. I spent a year dealing with all the items that are going on down there and those types of statements that you're making run through. I don't want to go there. The Campanelli Park, right now, we are in the process of trying to rezone. There will be public hearings about that site coming up. You'll have an opportunity to speak at those public hearings about what you want to do and how you want to get changes down there. This is not the forum to be able to do that right now. I understand you want to speak, and I've allowed you to speak, but when you speak here, and we're on TV, it's a public hearing, I'm not going to allow you to make statements that aren't true. Okay?
That aren't
I
true?
factually know aren't true.
I said something that wasn't true. I'm sorry.
Right. That's all I'm trying to say. Tom. Yes, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to address this. We're going to hold, I'm going to be holding another public meeting with the neighbors of the thing.
Of Campanelli Park.
On the Campanelli Park. We listened to them. I told we had the consultant go back and look at some things. It was the intent, and I'm going to let you know, I inherited this. It was the intent that we were going to look at changing the existing boundaries, leaving the existing boundaries of the industrial park and changing the uses that were allowed and making them more intense. That's all the project was. My predecessor at the last minute said, oh, well, let's add these extra properties. I have told them, we listened to you. I listened to the people on Corbett Street. Well, I'm going to finish. I'm going to talk now because I was totally interrupted and the meeting got really out of hand and that's not going to happen. We've listened to you. All of that has been taken out. Not a single piece of residential property. The boundary of the industrial area is not going to be removed, is not going to be moved on the South Street side. And in fact, it is going to be moved on the Corbett Street side, because if you look at the zoning map, the line is squiggly and it goes from, the setback varies from 125 feet to 0 feet, the industrial park up to those residences. We listen to the Corbett, we listen to you. Our proposal is going to be, and you'll see this, I have to look at getting the final things to schedule the meeting. We're going to make a 125-foot consistent setback along all the residences on Corbett is what our recommendation is. To take that line and to make it, to protect those individuals. We have listened to you. We've taken all of that information in. The other things that we're looking at, and I've told the consultant to do, is that, is that one of the issues, and I'm just going to highlight 3 things that we did. There's none of that's going to be rezoned. We're going to make a 125-foot consistent recommendation to rezone and make that industrial district 125 feet from the residences along the Corbett area where it turns around. And then the other thing that we're looking at doing is that in the proposed language, there allows for a 5th story under special permit. And I have told the consultant to write an exception, except any industrial property that abuts a single-family residence, that is excluded, will not happen. So we've listened to you, and I'm hoping to, I was hoping in October, but the planning board's going to keep me pretty busy in October. But I'm hoping in October to have another public meeting. I'm going to enlarge the area to make sure everyone on South Street is noticed. I can't notice everyone, but we're going to, there was some lady that the way the notice was, it's on your side, but then it didn't go on the other side of the street. I'm going to make sure that that goes on the other side of the street within the South Street. Have another meeting and show you the maps on we heard you, here's how we've made the changes. And I will let you know, in talking with my boss after the meeting, I said the intent was to not change the industrial district and I didn't look at the map. We didn't really look at the map. We were looking at the zoning, and my predecessor at the last minute with a different consultant added all of that property between the industrial park and your property. That's now, we've taken that out. We have no desire. So we've listened to you, and I'm going to hold another public meeting with all of you and explain that, you know, that's what we're looking at doing. It's literally keeping keeping the boundary the same. Other than, actually, I can't say that. I can't say that because I'd be lying. Because the Corbett people are going to get additional. You're going to lose some area of the industrial park because we want to create a consistent 125-foot setback.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, well, one other thing. No, not for you, the board. So the Stoughton Urban Center, the Stoughton Center Urban Renewal Plan is coming up. We've put it in your package.
Right.
Please review the comments and read it so we can fully understand it and be able to discuss it.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, that's separate. You'll have our notes from the last time. It's a fully new public hearing. So everybody, Mr. Murphy, can participate. So you'll see my comments and Pam's comments, and then it's in red, their reply, and I printed the entire 200 pages for each person, so you actually have the book to read. So please do that, and that's next. Well, Mr. Zamani will be here next week, in 2 weeks. That will be on the 28th, and so.
Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.